We are live on a Monday edition of the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live video streaming on the X platform, YouTube, at Mike Gill Show. What's up, everybody? Good to be back. Hello out there to all. Phillies wrapping up spring training today. It is their final Grapefruit League game before they count on Thursday. More on that coming up as the Phillies have set their opening day roster, and it has some twists in it. Not a lot, but there's one decision that needed to be made, and it has been made. We'll give you the details on that. Plus, the lineup today, different from the lineup yesterday. How come? We'll discuss that and more on the Sports Bash. March Madness, got to be honest, hasn't been great. And I have a way to fix it. And that's coming up later on as well. I love the tournament as much as anybody, but I think it needs a little freshening up. And it's not crazy. It's not crazy. It's just a little freshen up. It'll keep it about the same. It'll just be a little twist. All right? We'll talk about that later on in the show as well. I don't think I missed any real big Eagles news. I did see, I think while I was gone, a couple of days we were down in Florida, and I think the Phillies, the Eagles lost another free agent, Fred Johnson, the backup left tackle, ended up going to Jacksonville, and, it's not one of those big losses, but he did start like 5 games for you last year and didn't miss a beat. If you remember the big game that Fred Johnson played in, they played against Cincinnati, and he basically stonewalled Trey Hendrickson in that game. So much like the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl the first time, and Big V had to replace Jason Peters. Now, when Big V stepped in to replace Jason Peters, that was in the back end of the season when they needed him in the Super Bowl. This was in the front end of the season, but still a 5-game stretch where a backup left tackle stepped in and played a pretty big role for this team over a 5-game stretch. So, think about this now. You've now got to replace Becton. You've now got to replace your swing tackle. And if you replace Becton with Tyler Steen, you now need to replace your swing guard as well. So there are a little bit of tweaks on that Eagles offensive line. Not enough to set your hair on fire, but just a little something, right? A little something there. Avonte Maddox is also gone. He signed with Detroit. I guess that was over the weekend, maybe. Maybe it was on Friday. He signed with Detroit. Now, Detroit needed some defensive back help. They were a spot that Darius Slay had thought about going. They did not sign Darius Slay. Instead, they went with Avonte Maddox. And Maddox, more of a slot guy. His problem has been he couldn't stay healthy. And he went to Pitt. Those were 2 problems that I had with him. But other than that, no, I'm just kidding about the Pitt stuff. And Maddox was a pretty solid player when he was healthy. He just could not stay healthy. So he ends up going to Detroit over the weekend, or maybe what day was that? Thursday. Friday was Friday. It was the 21st. He signed on the 21st. So he signed with Detroit on Friday. So Fred Johnson, that happened I think that was on Tuesday. And then Avonte Maddox happened on Friday. We were off the air, with the tournament for Thursday and Friday. Brandon Graham announced his retirement, and that happened on Tuesday. Fred Johnson was on Wednesday. So there was a lot of little Eagle stuff happening while I was gone. Oh, another thing that happened while I was gone, this happened on Monday night, which was Lane Johnson got a restructured deal, and that's interesting. And then this happened while I was on the air late on Monday, right before I got off the show. The Eagles signed Azeez Ojulari, and that was one that I don't want to say predicted, but I said if there was one free agent that was still on the open market that the Eagles should go after, or that I can envision them going after, it would be Ojulari. So there's where we are with the Eagles. I have an article up right now at 973ESPN.com, and if you have your alerts on, you have the update at the Eagles depth chart and where it stands before the draft. So check that article out. Check out the depth chart. There's a lot of battles all of a sudden here that It will be intriguing. We're going to do football at 4 with Mosher today, and I want to kind of get his overview of the depth chart leading into the draft and where we are now. No Maddox, no Fred Johnson, no Mekhi Becton. What happens at guard? You have a lot of questions. And, of course, the tackle position, Lane Johnson gets the extension. You know, in a situation where the Eagles have been trying to shed money, right? When they've been trying to shed as much money as they possibly can, it's not that they're not spending any money. They're picking and choosing. And they gave Lane Johnson, who is a mainstay for this team, and I'm not criticizing for them for this at all. They gave Lane Johnson, what are you doing? No. They pinpoint Lane Johnson and said, you are important to us, and you are getting an additional $30 million in guaranteed money. Like, this is something that's an appreciation of how good he has been and how important he is to this team. So Lane Johnson, that's a big deal for them. And then Brandon Graham subsequently announces his retirement. So now you've got to you brought back and extended one Eagles legend. And listen, when we say Brandon Graham and Lane Johnson, those two guys, number 65 and number 55, they're going to be forever hung at Lincoln Financial Field. They will be in the Ring of Honor. Those two guys are all-time great Philadelphia Eagles. Lane Johnson and Brandon Graham are one of just a handful of Philadelphia Eagles to win multiple Super Bowls. The list is not long. I mean, it's anybody, Graham, Lane Johnson. I think Rick Lovato was on both teams. I think Jake Elliott was on both teams. There's 4 there. I think there might be 1 or 2 other guys. I'm that's neither here nor there. But Lane Johnson and Brandon Graham are going to go down as 2 of the greatest Philadelphia Eagles of all time. Think about that. So Lane Johnson gets that. Brandon Graham retires. Obviously, Johnson extending means you now have a right tackle in place for the next 2 seasons at least. That actually, it's 3 seasons because it's a 2-year extension, which he had 1 year left, so it's going to bring him through the 2027 season. So really good move there. But then Brandon Graham retires, and you kind of thought that was happening, but you've also lost Josh Sweat. But I think they've done a really nice job. You know, I'm not the biggest fan of the Uche signing, but I think with the Ojulari signing, that now tells me Josh Uche is less of an important piece. He's more of a role player and now can go into the role that he excelled in New England, which is I'm so actively working over here, like using my hands, and I'm so excited about this conversation that my watch is like, great job, you started your exercise today. It's kind of crazy that on March 24th, with the Phillies a couple days away, that I'm more excited about moves that happened with the Eagles a week ago and kind of like getting into – I'm going to get the Phillies into a second here. I don't remember which days all this kind of stuff happened, but Graham retiring, I guess that was on Tuesday last week.
It was Tuesday.
Brandon Graham, to me, is he my favorite Eagle of all time? No. I mean, I have guys that I've enjoyed more. Brandon Graham, the strip sack play is the greatest play in the history of the franchise. It's better than a Philly. It's better than any play you can think of. Brandon Graham's strip sack is the most important play in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles. He goes down as one of the greatest Eagles of all time. He's not at the top of the sack list, 76 and a half. He is not a guy who was a huge sack artist. I mean, he had double-digit sacks, I think, once in his career. But he is probably one of the most important players in the history of the franchise. And this starts with Brandon Graham. I'll never forget this day. I was doing a show at one of the casino bars, draft day. We do our draft party every year, which has now evolved into a huge show. But back then, we did the show live on location. I don't even remember the place. It's been so long since Brandon Graham was drafted. But I remember that day, and the, fans wanted Earl Thomas or JPP. And Earl Thomas had won a Super Bowl, and JPP won multiple Super Bowls. And here is Brandon Graham, and now he has 2. Brandon Graham goes down as one of the greatest Philadelphia Eagles of all time. And who would have predicted that when he was drafted? I want to say he was the 13th overall pick in that draft. I know he went to Michigan. I don't quite remember where he was drafted. I don't know if he was 13. He might have been a little bit lower than that. But he will go down as one of the greatest Eagles of all time. Maybe not in terms of accomplishments, in terms of numbers, but 2 Super Bowls, 1 team, entire career, 1 city, overlooked, wasn't the guy that people wanted. Where was he drafted?
13th overall, 2010.
Ooh, 13th overall, 2010. Yeah. I mean, he's on the he's not on the Mount Rushmore of Eagles, but
there's a couple things with him, and we discussed this, on Tuesday, Mike, when I was filling in for you. There's 2 parts of Brandon Graham's career that stands out to me, because one of the conversations that we had with Adam Capita and Rick Saratella on Tuesday was almost 70% of Brandon Graham's sacks came from 2016 to 2024. The first few years of his career, people might not remember this, but he was called a bust. He was called a failure. It was a bad pick by the Eagles, etc. But as soon as they changed that defensive front, he was unleashed. For a guy to have 70% of his career sack production and the back half of his career, first of all, it's just insane. Second of all, most people don't know this, he is second in Eagles history in quarterback hits. Second. So that means even when he wasn't getting sacks, there was a run there, Mike, where he was getting to the quarterback and he was fulfilling that first-round grade.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, he was never a double-digit sack guy. He wasn't that, 12, 13, 14. We're talking about like Myles Garrett gets 14 sacks multiple years in a row. Trey Hendrickson, multiple, double-digit 14 sack season. I think Myles Garrett had 17 or 14 2 years in a row. Hendrickson somewhere up there. That wasn't Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham was not this big.
11.
Yeah, he had 11 one time, and I don't think he had double digits ever again.
Nope.
He, as I was explaining, he is not numerically one of the all-time greats. What he is just one of the most impactful, important Eagles in the franchise. And as I mentioned, when he got drafted, people wanted Earl Thomas. They wanted JPP. And then those guys had earlier success than Graham did, and Graham got off to a slow start. He wasn't a very impactful player early in his career. But what he became after where he started is pretty unbelievable. And that play, that strip sack, is the greatest play in the history of the franchise. Now, Jeff is watching on YouTube today. He says you can't retire every number. No, you can't retire every number. That's why I'm not a proponent of Nick Foles getting his jersey number retired. But you certainly have to retire 55 and 65. If you're not retiring every number, I get that. But if you're going to pick 2, those 2 were on the list, 55 and 65, Jeff. They got to go on the list.
I mean, it's 55, 65, and 62.
62 is probably like – now, keep in mind, Jeff, those 3 players, 62, 65, and 55, they all played with one team. I get the Foles thing. He won the Super Bowl here. He had an amazing story and run. But he played for like 5 teams and stunk at every stop except for the 2 brief tours of duty in Philadelphia. So I've always been a proponent. He has a statue outside. That's fine. Another quarterback can wear number 9 and I'll be all right. But 55, 65, and 62, those 2 players they played their entire career in Philadelphia, and one of them won 1 Super Bowl. The other 2 won 2 Super Bowls. And I think they go down as 3 of the great Eagles of all time. Now, Jeff says Pittsburgh has 3 retired numbers. Dallas has 0. Listen, I get it. I'm not a big proponent. I think you have to be truly, truly like special, immortal to be a Hall of Famer. But I think, I could flip back to you and say, well, the Yankees are one of the greatest franchises of all time, and they have almost no numbers available.
Right.
And it's one of the charms of that team is that you can't wear 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean,
also the number retirements for the fans as much as it is for the players. It's a recognition to the player, but it's also recognition to the fans that, hey, you love this guy, we love this guy, we're going to immortalize this guy.
Listen, if you told me 62, 65, 55, that's it. Those 3 right there. I don't think anybody else from the 17 team really was around long enough. Wasn't a one-time, like Malcolm Jenkins, no, that's not a number you retire. I think those three guys earned it, though. Brandon Graham, most important play in the history of the franchise. Lane Johnson, maybe the best and most accomplished offensive lineman in the history of the franchise. I think it's okay to say the greatest offensive lineman your organization ever had gets his jersey number retired. And then, now you would say, okay, then why Kelsey and Lane Johnson? Jason Kelsey's going to go down as maybe one of the greatest centers, not only in the franchise, in the history of the game.
Yeah, he's one of the 3 or 4 best all time.
Right. 6 All-Pros.
There's only a couple of guys who've done that.
So I get it. You can't retire every number. And they might have I don't know who the Eagles what do they do there? Like there's this the wall of Ring of Honor or whatever. What is it?
Yeah.
I don't even know. I know I guess 92. I guess 20's up there with Dawkins. I don't even know who the Eagles are. That's how kind of insignificant it feels sometimes. But if you want to make that something, you start with 65, 55, and 62. That's where you start there.
So it's 5 for Donovan McNabb.
5 for Donovan McNabb. And guess what? If you told me that 5 wasn't up there, and I was a huge McNabb fan, I'd be okay with that. I don't know that McNabb had to have 5 up there. I know he will always love you.
15, Steve Van Buren.
Yep, I wasn't around, so I can't really say yay or nay to that.
NFL championships, though.
Okay.
That's significant for a lot of the old school fans. Number 20, Dawkins, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Number 40, Tom Brookshire, another back to the NFL championship days. Number 44, Pete Retzlaff, another back in the day.
Right, so you're getting guys who won NFL championships.
NFL championships.
Yep. So I can't say yay or nay to them because I just wasn't around. I don't know enough about their careers in terms of, yes, it was so impactful. They won championships. That's generally what happens. Now, I think Jeff's point is Steelers have won a lot of championships. Dallas has won a lot of championships. And they have 3 numbers retired in Pittsburgh, 0 in Dallas. Hey, to each their own with all these organizations. Who else? Who's current?
Well, I was just going to say Ben Nerrick's numbers retired, number 60. Number 70, Al Weistert.
Mm-hmm.
92, Reggie White. And 99, Jerome Brown.
Okay. Yeah, so, you've got a bunch up there, and all of them are pretty much pre-Super Bowl era.
Yeah.
So you don't have...
You have to include the Super Bowl era guys in some capacity.
Well, now that you've won 2. Now you've won 2 Super Bowls in 8 years.
This is an era.
You start to now add people who are more deserving. The other eras, quite frankly, I could go without 5, and I'm a huge McNabb fan. I probably can say 20 doesn't need to be up there, quite frankly. I don't know about that. He's the greatest safety in the organization. But you didn't win anything.
I'll be sacrilegious, and I'll say Jerome Brown. That was more of like a...
that's a different situation. Obviously, he was a all-pro level player for a very short time, and he tragically died. So I think that's one of those things where they did it in memory of him more than his accomplishment. So I'm okay with 99. He was a very impactful player for a very short amount of time. That said, some of the guys that go back to the pre-Super Bowl era, there's a lot of players there. They won multiple NFL championships. So I guess it's similar.
5.
Now the Eagles
There's 5 of them.
And the Eagles now have 2 Super Bowls. So you're going to start to get players now that their stature goes up.
Well, also, what happens if Jalen Hurts goes on to have a Hall of Fame career?
Right. Well, he's already he's already on a plateau. Or I don't want to say plateau because that would not be good if he stopped right here.
He's on a trajectory.
He's on a trajectory is the word I'm looking for. That he would supplant 5 as the greatest modern-day quarterback.
Right. So if he goes on
I don't like to comment on guys that I never saw.
No, I get that. But I'm saying if he goes on to have a great career, are we just not going to recognize him? Of course we are.
Yeah, and look, and good job out of Jeff. He's updated. He said the Giants and Bears each have 14. So every organization's a little different. Some organizations,
but see,
it's a big thing, and other organizations, it's maybe the Cowboys are one of those organizations. Like, no, we're never going to do any. That's just who we are. We're just never going to do it.
To me, the Eagles, Giants, and Bears have something very much in common. They are all teams with very passionate fan bases, and their fans have as much of a connection to the players as those players have to an organization.
Are you saying the Cowboys fan base isn't passionate?
Not as passionate as Eagle fans.
Okay.
Eagle. I mean, I think that Eagle fans there is an emotional connection with these players.
And Pittsburgh, by the way, it's another one that he mentioned.
I think Pittsburgh is just a unique situation because they're just such a classic franchise, and I mean, it took them so long to retire anybody. I think they're just kind of like they took the Mike Gill road where they were like, nobody unless you are the elite of the elite is good enough. Like they don't let anybody.
Which I'm
in the
okay
door.
with. Like, and by the way, though, you win multiple Super Bowls like Brandon Graham and Lane Johnson. If you told me, Jeff, no Kelsey, okay. I can live with no Kelsey. One Super Bowl. The other two have two, though. And
Yeah.
I think you get two.
And listen, this is
enough. And by the way, for all three of them, the Super Bowl wins coupled with one organization is what changes.
Well, that's the thing for me, Mike, and that is there's a small list of people who have won multiple championships in the city of Philadelphia. It's Brandon Graham, Lane Johnson, Jake Elliott, and Rick Lovato, and they join Bobby Clark, Bill Barber, Bernie Perrant, and guys like that. No Sixers, no Phillies. There's such a small list. You have to recognize those guys.
609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. We're just getting started on a Monday. We're back from Clearwater. Thoughts on the Phillies? A lot of thoughts on the Phillies, actually, because it looks like the Phillies are going to do something that I'm not sure how fans are going to react to this. We're going to talk about it with Mike McGarry coming up next on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. If you looked at the Phillies lineup yesterday, it looked like an opening day lineup. But the lineup today is different from the lineup yesterday. And it also looks like a opening day lineup. So which one is it, Rob Thompson? It might be both. We'll discuss that next on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live video streaming on the X platform and on YouTube at Mike Gill Show. Subscribe, watch the show, be a part of the show now at 609-403-0973 on the text board. We're back with Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City next. 229 on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live video streaming on the X platform, YouTube, at Mike Gill Show. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City's back. Friday, all the games are on. The madness, not so mad this year. I actually have an idea to try to spice this tournament up a little bit, and I love the tournament, but just a little something to maybe add to it. I don't think we need the conference tournaments anymore, and I love the conference tournament. I love the MAC being in Atlantic City. Time to get rid of all those major conference tournaments. I got an idea for you guys in 1 hour from now. Mike McGarry's here from the Press of Atlantic City. And, Mike, the final preseason game, Grapefruit League action for the Phils today. So yesterday, they put out a lineup that had Kyle Schwarber leading off. Today, they have a lineup that has Trey Turner leading off. Which one is it going to be?
Well, I think it's going to be both because I think they might be trending to having a lineup against righties and a lineup against lefties. And, I would be okay with that. I'm not as caught up in everybody as the lineup. I think over the course of 162 games, the difference in the lineup is really minuscule. I just think we're looking for things to debate right now. And once again, we've come to the lineup and where Kyle Schwarber could hit. It's like Groundhog Day.
You mentioned it, a left-handed lineup and a right-handed lineup. We really haven't seen that. Yeah, they have days where guys platoon, but generally you don't switch it. But I can recall the Diamondbacks doing this in the playoffs against the Phillies. Corbin hit leadoff some days. Marte hit leadoff against the lefties. Corbin against the righties. It seemed to work for them. So it seems like the Phillies are saying, you know what, let's try this out.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost trying to have their cake and eat it too. Now you have, some days Schwarber will hit down in the order against lefties. He'll hit down in the order, right? And against righties, he'll be the leadoff guy. And again, I can see both arguments. I can see people's desire to put Schwarber down in the order, but the Phillies have won an awful lot of games with him at the leadoff spot. And look, the Phillies' success this season, Mike, I don't think it's going to be determined by who has the most leadoff at bats. There's going to be 5 or 6 other factors in there that will determine how successful the Philadelphia Phillies season is. And one thing I'm concerned about, Mike, is this starting rotation that, I thought could have been the best in baseball. Now all of a sudden doesn't look so great because we're right back with Taijuan Walker in the number 5 spot. And that didn't really work well in August or September of last year, if you remember.
Well, I was going to start there with you, Mike. It looks like Wheeler, Luzardo, Nola, Sanchez, and Walker will start as the number 5 guy. Is it time to start getting worried about Ranger Suarez?
I think it is, Mike. I mean, it's a recurrence of the back injury that really hampered him the second half of last season. Questions now start, can he stand up to the workload of being a full-time starter? Is he physically capable of throwing 200 innings a year? And I think this is a disappointing start to a season that he wanted to have a big season. This is his walk year. And for the Phillies, Dave Dombrowski in October kind of told us all, said, hey, we won 95 games last year. We might have won 100 if we had a valid number 5 starter over the second half of the season or in August and September. And, I understand, but I would think there'd be a thin rope here or a short leash with Taijuan Walker.
Mike, we also have the final roster decision came down, and apparently Millville's Buddy Kennedy has been told he will not make the team. Cody Clemens will get that spot. Now they're going to try to trade Buddy. If he can't trade him, they'll DFA him, and then I guess he can decide whether he wants to come back and play at Lehigh or not. But that was really the one there, Cody Clemens. But Johan Rojas essentially has been told he's made the team, but it doesn't sound like he's a platoon guy. They're going to go with Brandon Marsh as an everyday outfielder, it looks like. Do you think that lasts?
No, I don't think it lasts because, I think it'll last a month or two, but I don't know if Brandon Marsh can hit left-handers. Last year, he showed that he couldn't. They're going to go to that experiment again and play him every day and play him against most left-handers, I would presume, and we'll see how it goes. Now, based on prior history, it's not going to last that long because it was the same talk when last season started. Is Marsh going to get a chance to play every day? How do we know he can't hit lefties if he doesn't play against lefties? But his numbers against lefties were bad last year. And look, I'm a wait and see it guy. and a guy who kind of leans on the past to predict the future. So the past would say that Marsh can't hit lefties, and we'd be back in a little bit more of a platoon situation with Johan Rojas come June or July.
Yeah, that's, I think, especially because we talk about the lineup, Mike, and you look at the lineup the other day, they had Schwarber leading off. The last two guys in the 8-9 spot are both left-handed. You could have three left-handed hitters back-to-back-to-back hitting 8, 9, and 1, and that's a situation where someone brings in a lefty, you're in a big spot there. You got three left-handed hitters. That's a tough way to go through if you're going to start Brandon Marsh every day against lefties, and he's struggling against them.
Yeah, and you don't want to stack. The reason why now it's more important than ever not to stack your lefties together, Mike, is because as everybody knows, you bring in a reliever and he has to face three batters, right? So if you bring in your lefty specialist, you would like to have a righty in that mix. So if a guy comes in and has to face Schwarber and Harper, you're hoping that Alec Boehm or some other right-hander is in that mix that can really take advantage of the other team's strategy move. If you have three lefties in a row stacked, you're just making it easy for the opposing manager. Okay, I'm going to go get my lefty. He's got to stay in for three batters. Here they are, 1, 2, 3, and away we go. So, yeah, that is a spot that I'm sure the Phillies would look to avoid. And, Mike, I think Johan Rojas has some value to the team. He's still an outstanding defensive player. I know there are some questions about his offense. Supposedly he played winter ball this year and developed offensively there. But I still think Rojas, with his speed and defense, is a guy that's going to get some at-bats. But he might be a 300 at-bat a season guy where we love Johan Rojas. If he gets 500 at-bats, we might hate him, but the same could be true about Brandon Marsh. Brandon Marsh might be a 350 to 400 at-bat guy a year. We think he's great. 600 at-bats, not so great.
Last little thing with the Phillies over the weekend, they decided to go with Rafael Marchand as the backup catcher. Garrett Stubbs got optioned to AAA. I don't want to say it's a gutsy decision, but I saw you tweet as expected. It's the right move, but are you surprised that they actually pulled the trigger on that decision?
Not surprised at all. It makes sense from the Phillies' position, right? It's the business of baseball, and unfortunately for Garrett Stubbs, he's on the short end of it. But he has options right now, and he can be sent to the minors. Marchand can't. And considering Marchand and JT Realmuto's injury history the past few seasons, chances are you're going to need another catcher along the way. And to let Stubbs walk, and he certainly would have been, or let Marchand walk if they kept Stubbs, Marchand would have been picked up, and that's not a position of strength within the organization, basically. They don't have 100 catchers down there in AAA and AA in the minor leagues just waiting to bust through. So, yeah, not unfortunate for Garrett Stubbs. He's kind of the victim of the business of baseball, but not surprised that they figured out a way to keep all three catchers. It's the smart move. And, Mike, I'll say right now, I said to somebody, Garrett Stubbs will be up here in July. It'll be a Sunday afternoon at Citizens Bank Park. He's going to come up. He's going to get a big hit. He's going to get a walk-off hit. And we're all going to write our Garrett Stubbs, great guy, stick with it story. So my prediction, that will happen this summer at least once.
Well, Real Muto essentially will go on the injured list at some point, or Marchand. That guy always gets hurt. But I think what Rob Thompson did during the broadcast yesterday was that now Stubbs will get to play every day and swing the bat every day so that when he does come up here, he could actually benefit more from having been down because he's playing a lot more. And now you have a veteran guy like Stubbs handling some of the pitchers at the AAA level. So he's almost serving as like I don't say a coach, but, to have a veteran guy down there is a big boost for some of those guys. So no Stubbs. And I only say that because you just saw what happened with Cody Clemens. He makes a team. Buddy does not. Buddy Kennedy has no options left. Clemens did, but they stuck with the better player.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Clemens had options left, but Buddy definitely didn't. And look, Cody Clemens, it's tough for Buddy. Again, it's the business of baseball. I'm sure Buddy, they're going to try to trade him over the next couple of days. If they can't find a suitable trade, they're going to DFA him. I'm sure somebody will claim him on waivers, and he will be with another big league ball club. I think it was just a tight spot here for Buddy with the Phillies. I think Buddy has shown, especially with the way he played for the Phillies last year in some big games, that he's capable of being a major league player. So I would expect expect Buddy Kennedy to kind of land on his feet with a major league organization in the next few days. It's just unfortunate that it wasn't with the Phillies. And again, as we talked about in the Garrett Stubbs case, it's kind of the business of baseball, right? And Garrett Stubbs got caught on the short end of it, and Buddy gets caught on the short end of it today. He's basically the 27th guy on a 26-man roster.
Keep in mind they added a player, too, so the 26th guy essentially wouldn't have been here a couple of years ago either. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. They extended Lane Johnson on Friday last week. We were not on the air that day. I say 55, 65, and 62 will probably never be worn again. Is that too many?
I'm a fan of retiring numbers. So to me, it's not too many. I think you've got to honor people that have meant a lot to your franchise, honor people that have helped you win Super Bowls when you haven't won any Super Bowls before those guys got here. I know the Phillies love to debate Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, and Jimmy Rollins. Should their numbers be retired? I'm 100%. I maybe wouldn't go as crazy as the New York Yankees. They have every number, it seems, between 1 and 50 retired,
Yep.
Basically. You turn on a Yankee game, guys are wearing 92, 83, because they have no numbers left. But I'm a fan of honoring people, and they don't have to be Hall of Famers, though certainly some of the numbers you just gave, guys, are going to be Hall of Famers. But I think you retire some numbers, and I don't think there's too many. I think you got to remember this special era of Eagles football.
That's Graham, Kelsey, and Lane Johnson, by the way, for the people out there. 55, 62, 65. Johnson got an extension. Graham retired, and, of course, Kelsey has been retired. Mike, it was supposed to be opening day for the high school baseball season, but it looks like a lot of washouts. But what are we looking at this year?
Well, you can tell, first of all, that it was opening day because $1 to donuts, you could have bet any amount of money, and it would be raining on the opening day of the spring season. That's how you know the season's officially here. But we get underway fully on Wednesday with the baseball, softball, and spring sports season. We have the baseball preview up on PressOfAC.com right now, a look at every team. And once again, St. Augusta, the defending state non-public A champions, Mainland Regional, the defending Cape Atlantic League champion. A lot of good players in the area. Kyle Evans of Kyle Taylor, however, of Ocean City, great player. Jake Logic of Mainland Regional, great player. State Augusta with some great players. So I've always said, Mike, no other sport in the 30 years I've done it has gotten better than high school baseball around here in the past 25 to 30 years. The quality of play now compared to what it was when I first started in the early 90s is really night and day. So if you want to see some good baseball and you want to see some old-time baseball, bunting, steals, hit and runs, get yourself out to a high school field.
Mike McGarry, yes, you got some rain. I was flying home from Florida last night. It looked like a lot of the mainland parents were coming back from their week down in, I guess they played in St. Petersburg last week. So everybody was supposed to start today. It looks like a washout for most. But as Mike has his preview of the baseball season up right now at PressOfAtlanticCity.com and at AC Press McGarry. He's back on Wednesday on the eve of Phillies opening day. All right, Mike. Appreciate it, pal.
All right, we'll see you down the road. Let's hope for some good and warmer weather quickly.
Yes, indeed. I will say, you guys, now, if you saw me right now, you'd say, man, you got really tan. Yes, I did get pretty tan down there. But it was not very warm for most of the days. This is the product, for those of you watching on the YouTube and on the X platform, this is a product of basically 1 or 2 days that it was nice out. And now, listen, when you're out in the sun and it's 58 degrees, it is a little warmer in Florida than it's 58 degrees here. But I had long sleeve hoodie on almost 3 of the days I was down there. We went to the Phillies game in Dunedin against the Blue Jays, and it was cold, like flat out cold if you were not in the sun. Now, if you were in the sun, it was fine. You would say, well, why weren't you in the sun? Because the concourse in Dunedin is covered. So everything was kind of in the shade in Dunedin. Now, in the Phillies, if you are in the outfield at that tiki bar area, the tiki bar covers the sun. So if you're under that tiki bar, it's a little cold. Go outside that area, sun's hitting everything, not so bad. But it was a little chilly down there a couple of days. All right, that was Mike, and, of course, he'll be back on Wednesday show here on the Sports Bash. Anybody paying attention to the Sixers anymore? Maxi's out tonight. Quentin Grimes is out tonight. He's resting. Kelly Oubre is out tonight. Kyle Lowry's out tonight. Andre Drummond is out tonight. Lonnie Walker the fourth is out tonight. They're all not going to play, in addition to Paul George and Joel Embiid. Of course, the Sixers season has turned into, well, not turned into, it is a complete and utter disaster. But that is the update for those of you paying attention to see what the tankathon standings are, because that is something that you have to kind of pay attention to at this point. And look, this is interesting because they have a lot of games coming up against teams that don't have any interest in winning. And you take a look at that aspect of it. They are tied for the fifth worst record. The Pelicans, who they play tonight, have the fourth worst record. Neither team has any interest in winning this game. But the Raptors, who have one of the worst records in the league, the seventh worst, they play the Wizards tonight. And the Mavericks play the Nets tonight, who are tied with the Sixers for the fifth worst record. Now, remember, the Sixers, who are tied for the fifth worst record, if they fall out of the top five, they have to give their pick to the Oklahoma City Thunder. So a loss tonight for the Sixers is optimal importance because they are playing the Pelicans, who are the fourth worst team. Now, I have a hard time thinking they're going to catch the Pelicans. So really the Sixers can either finish fifth or sixth. I mean, and if they are, the margin of error here is tiny. You cannot win games. You cannot win games. Think about that. You can't win. That's the state of the league right now. You can't win games. All right, I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Now, I will say, one thing it didn't do while I was in Clearwater, it didn't rain. No Florida rain. It's raining here today. All day. Rain. Rained all day today. Miserable. Coming up, I have an idea for the NCAA tournament. Also, Bob Wankel, full Phillies preview with Bob. Is the batting lineup all that important? Not important? What's it going to look like? Text the show at 609-403-0973. Luke in Atlantic City says, Mike, you got to have 55, 62, and 65 retired. Heart and soul of this era, team, and championships. Luke in Atlantic City. Yeah, I go 55, 65, 62 in that order. 55, 60. If you told me only one, 55. If I had to pick one of those three, Brandon Graham has the most important play of the history of the franchise. 55 goes up. All right, back with more Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live video streaming on the X platform, YouTube, at Mike Gill Show. Like, share, subscribe. We'll be back with more Bash. All right, 2:53 on a Monday. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Spent a couple days down in Clearwater Beach, back at Bright House. Now, it's not Bright House anymore. It's called Baycare Ballpark. Went to Baycare yesterday. Went to TD Ballpark where the Blue Jays play on Friday to watch some Phils. And quick couple thoughts over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Some predictions for the Phillies season. One, I'm going to go with this. My MVP this year, I'm going to go Trey Turner. My MVP of the Phillies, I'm going to go Trey Turner. My Cy Young this year, I think Wheeler's the easy pick. I'm going to go Luzardo. I think because he's going to be in a spot to rack up a lot of wins. My bounce back season this year, I'm going Bryson Stott. I think he's the bounce back. Not many candidates here, but I go Bryson Stott. And who I'm worried about, I'm going to go Brandon Marsh against left-handed pitching. Don't like that one at all. We'll do more Phillies next hour with Bob Wankel. But first, I need caller 6 and 7, 609-573-3776, 609-573-3776. Caller 6 and caller 7 right now. You are entered for this year's opening day watch party. You can win tickets to see the Phillies home opener on Monday, March 31st, or Metallica playing at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. Caller 6 and caller 7 right now at 609-573-3776. Caller 6, caller 7 right now. Our Phillies opening day watch party is at Maynard's in Margate this Thursday. I can't believe opening day is this Thursday. We will be packing the place. Caller 6 and caller 7 right now. Good luck. All right, 3 o'clock, hour 2. Congratulations. Our latest qualifiers are Tim in Northfield, Matt in Absecon. We'll see them on Thursday at Maynard's in Margate, our opening day watch party. Phillies and Nationals to kick off the season. And one lucky winner is going to win Phillies home opener tickets for the home opener on Monday. And, of course, we have a pair of Metallica tickets as well. It's 2 shows in Philly at Lincoln Financial Field. You pick the winner. The winner picks the tickets, I should say. Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad is back for another season of Phillies baseball. If you have a chance to go to Phillies opening day or 2 Metallica shows at the Link, what are you picking?
Oh, I don't know.
You a Metallica guy?
I'm a Metallica guy. Whiskey in a Jar. Good jam. Underrated. Not exactly a deep track, but, I like Metallica.
Phillies tickets come with a parking pass.
I got to go Phils, man. I know everybody's down on the Phils here. I feel like we're talking about the Sixers or something, but it's going to be a good season.
Why do we think people are down on the Phils? Is it just the malaise of people want something new all the time? They want like a change. Something's got to be different. And the fact that it's not different, that then we complain.
I think it's disappointment in 23 compounded by an embarrassing early round exit against the Mets last season. Compounded with the fact that it's largely the same team, compounded with the fact that you and I are about to talk about a gap in the leadoff spot with no true solution, compounded by the fact that we're going to talk about Taijuan Walker actually starting a Major League Baseball game for this team in the 3rd game against the Rockies next week. I think most people acknowledge that the Phillies are going to be pretty good, but I do understand why there is a little bit of lack of juice right now.
Yeah, I think all those things are fair. Let's get into a couple. Obviously, the lineup is interesting. Yesterday, I was in Clearwater, as you could tell by my cool tan here, right? It was actually pretty chilly down there a couple days last week. But Schwarber was hitting leadoff one day, and then the next day, and people said, oh, is that the opening day lineup? Normally at this time of the year, you get a little opening day preview. One day it was Schwarber, one day it was Turner. Is it going to be both?
Starting to sound like it. Rob Thompson has had a little bit of an inconsistent message on this offseason. You go back to January, he was on the Phillies show with Todd Zalecki and Ruben Amaro and Jim Salisbury, and he was talking about this. And he said, we could maybe do some tinkering at the top and go back and forth. And then early on in spring training, when they got down to Clearwater, he sounded like he was kind of skewing away from that. Let's set it and let it go for a little bit. Now you fast forward to what they're doing here in the final week of spring training. And like you said, you're seeing both. And Trey Turner did hit leadoff today. So it does sound like that there could be a situation where they go Schwarber against righties and Turner against lefties. And I have some numbers here that kind of make me scratch my head about that. Number one, I sort of hate the inconsistency of it at the top of the order. You want to try to get the most out of your lineup in the back end of it and your role players, and you got to platoon certain guys. Like, I get that. You have to do that. But at the top of the order, you're talking about established veterans. I don't like the idea of jumping back and forth because for no other reason, it just feels like you don't have a real plan when you do that.
Yeah, the only time I can think of, Bob, I saw Arizona do this against the Phillies in the NLCS. Corbin hit against righties, led off, and Marte, when the Phillies pitched a lefty, he led off. I don't know that they did that all season long. I think they might have done it in the NLCS definitively, but that's about the only time I've seen a team tinker with 2 starting level players at the top of the lineup, where against one pitcher you're hitting in the one spot in the lineup and another pitcher you're hitting in a different spot in the lineup.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different things you have to consider here. First of all, Kyle Schwarber had a better on-base percentage than Trey Turner last year. He was on base 366 Schwarber, and Turner was 338. The thing that's really interesting about it, though, is if you get into the platoon splits, you think to yourself, like, okay, you don't want Schwarber leading off against a lefty. That's all fine and well, but Kyle Schwarber hit 300 against lefties with an on-base percentage of over 400 last year. Then Trey Turner hit 324 against lefties, but his on-base percentage was lower. It was only 363. So we're talking about Schwarber's on-base percentage against lefties being 40 points higher last season. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense. And then I think about the ramifications about Bryce Harper. And yes, is Bryce willing to hit fourth or hit second? Yeah, he's been on record saying that. But I do think that you might just be best served to go Schwarber 1, Turner 2, Harper 3. And I think that has something to do with it as well.
Well, because the other part of it is, Bob, if you move Turner to 1, it looks like you're moving now Harper from 3 to 4. So you're essentially moving 1, 2, 3, and 4, depending on who's pitching almost every single day.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think it's really just an acknowledgement that there's not a perfect solution to this. And I don't think there's anything wrong with tinkering. I don't think that there's anything wrong with trying different lineups throughout the month of March to figure out what you're going into opening day with. But I would prefer, once they start the season, let's get a set of data here to really look at. Like, I can talk about 2024 until I'm blue in the face about platoon splits, but let's see what happens in 25. Who's swinging the bat better? Is Trey Turner a little bit more disciplined? Does he have more of a conscious, is he making more of a concerted effort to increase his on-base percentage? Is he being more selective? So these are the things you have to look at here now in 2025. And I almost feel like a lot of this was sort of put into motion by, we need more out of Trey. If we put him in the leadoff spot, maybe that will force his hand to adapt. But that's not a spot you really want to be in.
Well, I was going to say, right, how much is this? Now, I guess it's weird because I figure if they just tried Turner and said, let's just start the season with Turner 1 and see how long that goes. Now, they have done this before. A couple of years ago, Schwarber hit lower in the lineup when Harper was out, and around June, they decided to go back to Schwarber, and that's kind of when the team took off. But Turner's best numbers in his career is as a leadoff guy. They won a World Series in Washington with him. So is this, hey, you know what, we do need more out of Turner. Where's he more comfortable?
Well, I think that they've probably had conversations with him in that regard, but you kind of peel back through all the layers, and Trey Turner, I think to some degree says, I am who I am, and I've gotten to where I'm at because I let my natural ability take over. And I think that Trey Turner wants to have a power element to his game. I don't think that Trey Turner wants to be up there selective and saying, oh, that's a 2-1, that's a pitcher's pitch. I think he wants to get up there and rip a little bit. And so I don't know if, I just don't know that Trey Turner is as enthusiastic about being a leadoff guy as some people want to make it seem. Now, look, the Phillies have won a lot of games of Kyle Schwarber leading off. And I know that there's a section of the fan base out there that thinks that they've won those games, in spite of the fact that he's hit leadoff. And I just don't think that that's really true. And I know it's unconventional, and I know that it's certainly not traditional, and it's not what I would want if I were constructing a perfect lineup myself. But I think that the real issue isn't so much that Kyle Schwarber is hitting leadoff or that he's hitting second or fourth or wherever. I think that it really comes down to protection for Bryce Harper in the middle of that lineup. And if they cannot protect Bryce Harper in the middle of the lineup come October, then this doesn't matter.
Who protects Harper better, though? Schwarber hitting behind? Well, you're not hitting Schwarber behind Harper. You're splitting them up with Bohm. So Bohm's essentially protecting Harper whether you're hitting him fourth or third.
Yeah, and I think that that's where, if you ask me, where are you at on the Phillies this season? I like the rotation. We can get to that in a minute. There's a big caveat to that. There's an asterisk that we must put on that conversation. But that's my hesitation about the Phillies. It's not that this group of guys can't win or that they don't have it, or it's not any of that. It's just that when you get into a short series against a team that can match up with you a little bit, do you have the ability to protect your main guns? And I think that they're a bat short. I've said that last year, said it this offseason. I think that they're a middle of the order bat short. And I don't think that you can get it by dropping Schwarber down in the lineup. I think they need something else.
All right, I want to, by the way, Trey Turner in his career has hit leadoff in 487 games. He has hit second 472. So 1 and 2 is the most he's hit. He's a little bit better as a leadoff hitter, 302 batting average, 350 on base. As a number 2 hitter, he hits 292 with a 344 on base. So it's almost 220, 221.
And what makes it complicated is that we're talking about a player right now that the larger conversation around this player is not, hey, we know what we're going to get. pencil him in and we can project it out. There is so much uncertainty about what Trey Turner is. I mean, the conversations in this city right now, surrounding areas, basically like, is this guy a bust? Is he going to be the MVP this year? Is he just going to be what he's been the first 2 years? He has his moments. We have no idea. I mean, you talk about a wild card for as consistent of a player as he's been and the pedigree that he has. It feels like you just have no clue what you're getting out of him this year.
All right, so I want to quickly, I know this is a hypothetical to the highest degree. You see any way, because I kind of suggest Dombrowski's going to give this team to about the trade deadline and say, look, if nothing's changed from the first 3 years of you guys being together, I'm going to have to do something. But is that something? My buddy and I are down in Dunedin the other day. We're watching the Blue Jays, and there's Vlad Guerrero. He wants $500 to $600 million. And I said, yeah, for a year, I think Harper would be willing to move to the outfield, but I don't think they want to pay him $500 or $600 million in an extension. And then I don't think Harper wants to move to the outfield full time. Like, I'll do it for half a season if you get a right-handed rental, but I don't think they want to make a deal to that magnitude, go over the luxury tax, and move Harper back to the outfield. So do you see a move of that level of magnitude, or is it more the right-handed rental guy and Harper says, yeah, I'll go to the outfield for half the year? What do you think?
Well, we've had conversations like this over the past number of years, and it always started out as, you know, if they identify a player that they really feel like is going to make the difference, that they would be inclined to go out and do it. But nothing that they have done at the deadline in 22 or 23 or 24 indicates that they will do that. Are they more inclined to do it now because it's sort of like the last gasp for this group? I think that they would explore anything that does not limit them beyond this year. I really think that we talk about this team largely being the same group.
But keep in mind, a move to get a Vlad Guerrero, you're giving up the top of your top end prospects for a rental then?
It just doesn't feel like it would break the form of what they have practiced to date. It feels like that they have placed an emphasis on, we do not want to empty the tank this year and then have to really scramble beyond. Like, we want these young guys to come up. We want to restock. We want to replenish. So to make that move, I don't think that they would do it. I guess I also don't know that they have the capacity to do it in terms of the prospects necessary.
Right. And you know, do you see Harper wanting to full-time move? I know he has said, hey, for the betterment of the team. I think he means like, hey, if you want to do it for a year or half the year. But I think ultimately he and the Phillies want him to play first base.
I don't see Bryce Harper playing the outfield in 2027 and beyond. If there's a 1 to 2 year stopgap solution, especially this season,
okay,
then I think that he'd be agreeable to it. I think that Bryce Harper wants to win, and if he knows that going to the outfield is going to help do that, then I think he would do it. But I don't think that he sees himself. I know he doesn't see himself as a long-term, multi-year outfielder again at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, as much as like, I do think though, do you agree with this, that if they are the same lineup again, and they're good, but they're the same looking lineup, that he figures out a way to say, I've got to shake. I can't go into the playoffs with this same group again.
Yes, I think that they would be inclined to make moves to alter the dynamics of the lineup at that point, but I just don't know that that means go out and get the big shiny object and trade away, you know, meaningful prospects to do it. I think it might take some creativity. I think you might be getting rid of a player or two that is on the current roster that you say, okay, that's interesting. I think it would almost be an entire shake of the DNA of the lineup.
Yeah, you know, and it's interesting. So do you think they're going to play Marsh every day? Is this like, you know what? We know we're going to win 90 games plus. Let's just let him hit against lefties for the first 100 games.
Yeah, I would at least give him those 2 months. I think you have to do that. I think that you have to say, all right, Brandon Marsh, you feel like you're an everyday guy. There is some evidence that you could have that in you. Not a lot. Give him a shot. Max Kepler, you think you can hit lefties? Here's a shot at it. Like, for what? To have Johan Rojas go out there? Like, come on.
Well, do you think that they are viewing Kepler differently than – I mean, it looks like they're going to hit him almost – it looks like in the five or six by – like, you know, it looks like they're thinking of him as more or almost more than Castellanos.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it goes. I think that the intention is to give Kepler and Marsh an extended run here, and I think – there's probably been some reflection on the way that things have been handled with Brandon Marsh in the past, where it's like we keep concluding, which is kind of ridiculous in a way. I mean, like they've kind of concluded at different points the past couple seasons that he can't do it every day. But part of it is that they have not given him that extended run of time. And because you lack quality options behind Brandon Marsh, it's like, yeah, we need to find out over 2.5 months if this is the reality of it, or is there more in the tank here?
All right, I got to ask this question the other day. I really don't know how to answer. You might know this better than me because generally your prospects go to Double-A. Justin Crawford going to Triple-A. Does that tell you that they're more inclined to then say, if he's ready, we'll move him up?
Yes, I just think that
as opposed to like if they send him to Double-A, does the Triple-A thing say, we want you to hit in Triple-A, see if you can handle some 4A guys, and if you are, you're the guy?
I think so, and I think part of that is his own development, and then part of that is just the Phillies situation in terms of the bench, in terms of the outfield depth, which is thin. I really think it's kind of like we can only do this for so long with the current mix. We need to know what we have. Is it like bringing up Justin Crawford? Is that just going to be a fun story, or is the guy actually going to help us win games? And I think what they are doing at the start of the season here to kind of get more knowledge about that.
Okay, we're talking with Bob Wankel from Crossing Broad. Phillies are back. We're going to have some more fun this year. Hopefully the team gives us some, interesting storylines. It seems that there will be. Number one, I am very high on Painter. I think he will be a big factor this season. Maybe not right now, although I wouldn't mind seeing Painter pitch on April 4th over Taijuan Walker. But are you concerned about Suarez, and does that tell you that Painter will be more of a factor than maybe you originally thought?
I think the Phillies are going to be disciplined in how they use Andrew Painter in terms of the innings pitched, the overall usage. But the phrase that they've thrown out is July-ish with him in terms of his timeline. And I think I would, if I were a betting man, I would probably guess that you see him, if all things go and progress as they anticipate, that you see him sometime in June. And yes, I think that you have to be concerned about Ranger Suarez. One, he's had a number of injury issues here in recent seasons. Durability, I think, is something that is a key question with him. I think it's part of the reason that you saw the Phillies run out and do a deal with Christopher Sanchez. And everybody kind of said, well, wait, what about Ranger? He's such a big part of this. Is he not going to be here long term? And I don't think he will be. I think that this is it for him in a Phillies uniform this season. And I think that they will probably try to scale him back a little bit. I think you'll see him in a hybrid situation throughout the parts of this season. And I think that the concern about Ranger Suarez is absolutely compounded by the fact that the Phillies were a 95-win team last year, right? And in Taijuan Walker's final 10 starts, the Phillies were 0-10.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons why they won so many games is because Sanchez and Suarez were like Cy Young candidates for the first half of the season.
But it's not just that you're missing Ranger Suarez. It's that you're replacing him with a guy that invokes no confidence whatsoever. And he was not good again today.
So you're not bullish on Taijuan?
No, I mean, look, like I said,
what can they do with him in that contract?
But you know what? Like, look, we're real quick on Taijuan Walker. It's like, it's just insane that we're doing this again. It genuinely is crazy. And I know he got lit up by New York last week. He was not good in the start today, especially the first 2 innings. He kind of recovered in the 3rd and 4th inning, if you want to be positive about this. But I mean, in his final 14 appearances last year, he had an 8.05 ERA. Opponents hit .323 against him with a 1.012 OPS. So now not only are you losing a guy that pitched at a Cy Young level for you for 3 months last season, you're also replacing him with maybe, the guy who was the worst starter in Major League Baseball for stretches last season. Yeah. I mean, and here we are doing this again. What can you do with the contract? I think you get to the middle of this year and you say, all right, that's $18 million in 26. We just got through about 9 of what he's owed in 25. Now we part ways. But Mike, I thought they would have done that last August, and we're still talking about this.
Well, I mean, you get these people text in, trade them and pay the other team to take them. I said, what is that accomplishing? I mean, unless they have a bad contract that they want you to take. I mean, to me, it's just an untradeable guy, and you're just begging maybe a team. I don't even know, like, if he has 2 good starts before Suarez comes back, is that enough for a team to say, we are so desperate for an arm, we'll take – I just don't see that
doubt
happening.
it. I mean, Ranger Suarez, they're talking about him maybe coming back by the end of April. So what do you see? Taijuan Walker 3, maybe 4 times. And if they go well, great. But I don't think some team's going to say that's our guy.
Yeah.
I
agree.
I don't foresee that. I truly don't.
Kerkering Romano, who has the bigger year? Is it Romano?
It's Romano, which everybody loves Raymond. You kind of go like, well, it wasn't Ray Romano. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think Kerkering certainly has more upside, but I do think that Romano is going to be handed opportunities to close games, especially early in the season, and we'll see what that looks like. It kind of follows that Craig Kimbrell, Corey Knievel, give the veteran guy the first crack, let Kerkering sort of, establish himself, and then evaluate where things are at come mid-May. I would hope Kerkering has the better season. The Phillies, I think, are relying on him quite a bit, and I think some of their bullpen moves this year and in the offseason, they don't look as strong on paper, but I think that there's a belief that Kerkering has more and will take another step, and they think that Alvarado has been fixed, and certainly his performance this spring was very encouraging. But I think that they feel like there's more there with those guys, and that's part of the reason they're sort of comfortable maybe being a move short of what you would have anticipated this offseason.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Alvarado. You buying this whole new Alvarado? He looks like he has figured something out, whatever it was. I mean, I know it was weird last year when he kind of went off the deep end and never really recovered.
Yeah, I don't really put a ton in spring training performance, but if you just look at how he has thrown the ball, numbers aside, and I mean, the numbers have been truly astounding, but numbers aside, the way that he has performed, the way the ball is coming out of his hand, you have to be encouraged by it. And then, look, this is a guy that has performed at a very high and borderline elite level for long stretches in recent seasons. So I don't think it requires a huge leap of faith to think that he could bounce back and really be a wipeout guy in late inning situations. But again, yeah, you're right. I mean, last year did not end well for him.
Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad. The Phillies are back, and they will open. They had just finished spring training. They beat the Rays 8-6, and the Grapefruit League is officially over. Let me tell you, Bob, I was there yesterday. It was like opening day. I mean, must have been 20,000 people in that ballpark. There wasn't a square on that berm to sit. Not one square to spare on the berm.
I'm very interested to see what things look like in Philadelphia next week. I think that the attendance will still be good. I think the buzz will come back once they start playing real baseball. I do.
It was down there all week long, I can tell you that. Those games, and by the way, Friday, they played a split squad game, and because there were so many people at Baycare, the other half of the people who probably couldn't get tickets for an affordable price, by the way, went over to Dunedin for $17 and got you know what they're charging for a standing room only ticket to get in a Philly spring training game?
What do you got for me?
$35 for a standing room only ticket at spring training.
That's a hot ticket. It's a hot ticket.
I tell you what, man, a berm seat. You
well,
get a grand.
I just want to let everybody out there know Phillies 105 next Thursday is Game 6, and that is the Taijuan Walker start. The one redeeming quality about that baseball game is it starts at 105 local time. So at least you won't be out there where it's 42 degrees and the hot dog wrappers are cycling around the stadium and all that. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, we'll be back with more Phils baseball all season long. Bob Wankel's back here on the Sports Bash, and the Phillies baseball is back on Thursday. Thanks, man.
All right, man. Talk soon.
All right, there he is. Bob Wankel, everybody, Crossing Broad. And we will, of course, talk Phillies baseball with Bob all season long here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live video streaming on the X platform, YouTube, at Mike Gill Show. Lot there. Good stuff. Your thoughts, 609-403-0973. All right, coming up. I have an idea on how to bring the Cinderella back to March Madness, and I want your guys' thoughts on it. Have you enjoyed the tournament? Did you think the tournament was a little stale? Your thoughts, 609-403-0973. You know, there's been so much talk about expanding the tournament, and I keep hearing, we don't need more teams. We don't need more teams. We don't need more teams. But I have an idea that will spice up the tournament. And that's coming up next on the Sports Bash Live. This hour is brought to you by Broadleaf Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating and plumbing service and installation. Call them 609-390-3907, online at broadleaf.net. When we come back, how to bring Cinderella back to March Madness. Don't go away. More Sports Bash coming up.
is the death of mid-major Cinderella runs. And I think it still can happen, but I think it's going to be more of a rarity. I think now we're going to see a lot of players that are playing for the Colorado States, that are playing for the McNeeses, that are playing for the Drakes, that are going to get poached by mid-level Power 4, Power 5 conferences, right? When I talk to mid-major coaches, the consistent complaint I always hear from them is retention. We can't hold on to players.
That was Jay Williams, who said the NIL is killing mid-majors, the Cinderellas that we all loved about the tournament. And I think this year's tournament, maybe it's an outlier, but is the NCAA tournament jumping the shark a little bit? 16 teams are left, 7 from the SEC, 4 from the Big Ten and the Big 12, and the ACC has 1 team left. That's it. Not one mid-major. No Cinderellas, no big upset that really was the story of this year's tournament. Josh, I think you asked me beforehand, what was the story of the tournament so far? I don't think there is one. This tournament's been weak sauce.
You think it's been weak sauce?
Yeah.
Just because there's no upsets?
Well, what we love about the tournament, it doesn't even have to be a Cinderella or that. There hasn't been very many games that have come down to the wire. It has been chalk a lot. It's big conferences beating big conferences, and all the Cinderellas basically went away early in this tournament. It just said there's none left.
Sure, but there's still been some great games in the
There's
tournament.
been some great games. I'm not saying
St. John's and Arkansas was a wild
great
game.
Very good game.
The Maryland buzzer beater at the end, taking out Colorado State at the end.
That was yesterday. So you're going to the 4th day of the tournament to find a game. And the St. John's Arkansas game happened. So you had to
go into the most recent thing we can remember because half of us were drunk on day one.
I don't think it's any surprise to anybody that this tournament is not getting the same buzz that it has been. Jay Williams has said the NIL is the death of the mid-major Cinderella run. We were talking about this the other day. So what has happened is there was a lot of upsets in the last 10 years or so.
Right.
One of the reasons that is you had all the big-time programs with one-and-done players, whereas the mid-majors, they had guys who were staying for all 4 years.
Right.
So you were getting players that were a little bit more seasoned, a little bit bigger, a little stronger, and they were beating these teams that were basically relying on freshmen to lead them. So you had a team full of seniors from, let's say, a McNeese State playing against a bunch of freshman player at, say, Oregon. And those seniors are like, hey, I have a little bit more skill, will, and everything than you, and you see that upset. You get that upset. And you would see that throughout college basketball. The mid-majors who had a little bit more veteran lineups. The problem is you get a veteran player that's any good, the NIL comes, and they take that guy away. So now you look at Florida. Who's the best player? The kid from Iona, Clayton. So he plays with Iona 1 year in the tournament. The next year, he's in Florida immediately. They got to do something, I think, to change the dynamics of the tournament but keep the charm of it.
Right.
So I have a very radical idea. Are you ready?
I'm listening.
Okay.
I'm very intrigued.
All right. I think the major conference tournaments are irrelevant now. You had 14 teams from the SEC into this tournament. What the heck do I need a conference tournament? I got 14 of the 16 teams in this tournament. They just played last week. I don't need to see them all again. The conference tournaments are now done. All of the Power 5. Actually, there's only 4 because the Pac doesn't exist. So you have one tournament with 64 entries that are all from the Power 5, basically, conferences. You can add a 5th one. The Big East, the ACC, the Big 12, the SEC, the Big 10. Those 5, all those teams get in.
So it's like instead of having a conference tournament, you're saying just put everybody into the same pool together.
Yeah, and I don't know how many teams that adds up to. You might need to put another conference in there or something that is on that kind of level.
Well, maybe you don't put all of them in there, like if you have a team with a losing record.
No, I think, basically what everybody's been saying is, these Cinderella, these mid-majors, you're not getting the best teams in there. I would just say take those 5 conferences and put them into a field of 64. All right? So now they have their field of 64 set. Because if you put 14 SEC schools in there, basically just, instead of having separate conference tournaments, just make one big field with all the teams from all the power conferences. Okay? So then you could say, hey, Providence, you were the worst team in the Big East. Guess what? You get in. And if you make your Cinderella run, there you go. Because there's no reason for them to play in the Big East tournament. And all those teams are getting in. All the automatic qualifiers from the major conferences, they don't need to get in. So add up how many teams are in those 5 conferences, and then we'll figure out after that. But here's what needs to happen. All of the Power 5 conference tournaments, the Big 10, the Big 12, the ACC, all of them, they're all gone. In its place is all of the mid-majors will have a field of 64 with the mid-major schools. They will play on the week that the major tournaments generally happened, and they will play on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they will get down to 32 teams. Down to 16 teams. So they will put in their field of 64 or 32, whatever you need to I don't know how many. If you start with 32, you get it down to 16. So the mid-majors will get down to 16. So the best 16 mid-majors, they then will enter the field after the 5 power conferences pare down to their best 16. And now you have 32, and you can seed them accordingly. And now, when there is a Cinderella win, it puts them into the Sweet 16. So now they get to play in the tournament all of these mid-majors. For instance, in Atlantic City, Mount St. Mary's was the 6th seed. The number 1 seed, Quinnipiac, did not make the tournament. Well, now they're in. Now they're in my tournament. Merrimack's in, Quinnipiac's in, Iona's in, Mount St. Mary's is in. They're all in the tournament. They're playing against the whatever league. I don't even know. The Horizon League. The Horizon League, they're top 5. You put them all in. Now, I have to do the math at how many teams are in each of these tournaments. So you might not be able to do 64 and 64. You might have to do 32 and 32. But get both of them down to the 16 best Power 5, the 16 best mid-majors, and then you combine those tournaments into a 32. And then, look, if Mount St. Mary's makes it that far and they got to play Duke just like they had to do in the first round, now they're doing it in the Sweet 16. With a chance to go to the Sweet 16, I should say. It's a radical, different thing, but you've got to do something different to make it a little bit more spicy. And I think what happens is it creates more revenue for everybody. CBS, TNT, they have the Power 5 tournament. Well, the week before, ESPN can have the mid-major tournament, and everybody can do brackets for that one. You can do brackets for this one. You can do brackets for when they all get together. You're just creating more and more revenue for everybody. But I think you've got to get to a point where you kind of – I don't want to have a 96-team tournament because essentially all that ends up doing is you're just putting more Power 5 teams in. When there's 14 teams from one conference in the tournament, what are we doing? What are we doing? Putting 14 teams from the SEC in. So give the Power 5 all of their, as many teams as they have. I don't know what each conference, you got to count them up and figure it out. Because you might not get to 64 teams if you just take the power. Like Big East, I don't know how many teams are in the Big East. I'm like 14. I know you got 16 in the SEC, so you got a decent amount there.
I'm still counting all the totals, but so if you take the ACC, Big 12, Big East, Big 10, SEC.
How many is that?
There were 50 teams with winning records.
Okay, now, 50 with just winning records.
I haven't added up all the teams total yet.
How many teams are in the conferences?
Like, for example, the SEC has 16 teams.
Okay.
The Big 10 has 18. I'm working on the rest right now.
Well, right there, 16 and 18, you're halfway there. I mean, you're halfway to 64, and that's without the ACC, the Big East, and the Big 12. I mean, the Big 12, I mean, they don't have 12 teams in it. I mean, yeah. So you said 50 teams have winning records.
Winning records of those 5.
So just those 50 are in.
Yeah. So then you're theoretically just looking for 14 teams.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you can get to 64 teams with the Power 5 conferences.
But for some reason, the Big East has 11 teams. What a weird number.
That is a weird number to have an off number. But so you have 50 teams with a winning record. Because what I was saying earlier is make the regular season matter more by basically saying the top 8 teams in the conference get an automatic bid. So you don't have a tournament, a conference tournament. You just say the top 8 teams in the regular season, you get an automatic bid into the 64. Because if you're saying 50 teams have a winning record, so there's got to be at least 64 teams in those conferences. I mean, you just gave me, 34 teams.
I'm adding it up right now. By the way, the Big 12 is 16 teams.
Right. So you got 16, 16, and 18 right there.
18 and 16.
34.
Plus 11 is 45, right?
Mm-hmm.
Plus 18 is 63.
Which conference is that? The 18.
18 is the Big 10.
The Big 10 has 18 teams in it.
Yes.
My gosh.
So we're at 63.
It's right there. You're at 63 teams.
Right. And then
that's not
even including the SEC, which has 16.
So
79 teams.
In those 5.
Those 5. I didn't count anybody else.
So those 5 conferences, you got almost 80 teams. You take the top 64.
Right. You just say, listen, the 50 that have the winning record, you're already in, and then we'll figure out the rest.
And then the mid-majors, the Ivy, the Horizon, the MAC, the MEAC, the Northeast, all of them. Yeah, they've got to have between them another at least 64 teams.
More than that.
Exactly. So you take the 64 from them, and the same premise holds here. The top, how many mid-major conferences are there? That's the problem. I don't know how many mid-major conferences there are.
Let me count that up.
You know, you might have 11 or 12 of the automatic qualifiers are mid-majors. And you just basically say, if you finish in the top whatever to get to 64, they're in. That's the tournament. They play 64, 4 days, get down to Sweet 16. The Power 5, they do 64, play 4 days, get down to Sweet 16. Now you have a 32. And you have a 32. The mid-majors, the best 16 mid-majors play the best 16 Power 5s for the right to go to the Sweet 16.
You have 26.
26 mid-majors.
Conferences.
So 26.
26 times 2 is 52. So you could theoretically, right off the bat, say the top 2 teams that finish in that league is 52 out of the 64.
Yeah.
And then just figure out the final 12.
Right, because, and then what you do is you have a selection Sunday. The top 2 teams from each of those conferences get in. That's what you say, 52.
52.
And then the last 12 spots are at-large selections. Correct. From, there's a Twitter handle, mid-major, whatever, I follow that guy, whatever. You can put some selection in, and those, they hand out, 14 or 12 at-large spots.
Right, like, for example, for those who don't know, Grand Canyon University, the team that lost to Maryland in the first round, they're in the Western Athletic Conference. But they did not have the best overall record in their conference this year. That was actually Utah Valley. In your system, Mike, both Grand Canyon and Utah Valley would make it.
Yeah, the top 2 teams. So essentially, if you went to the MAC in Atlantic City, Quinnipiac and Merrimack would have automatically been in.
Correct.
Now, you would say, well, that stinks. A team like Mount St. Mary's, that story doesn't happen. Guess what? Mount St. Mary's, I don't think anybody remembers that Mount St. Mary's played and won, by the way, in the first 4.
But we should note that Mount St. Mary might be an automatic qualifier in your system.
Maybe.
Because they have a better overall record than Quinnipiac.
Yes, exactly. So
they're 23 and 13.
But that's my point. There's still 14 teams. I think it was, we say 52, and you want to get to 64.
Right.
So you would still have a handful of at-large teams from those
conferences.
How many
26 conferences.
There's 26 mid-majors.
Mid-majors.
Wow.
That's why I said the top 2, you get 52.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a way to give more mid-majors a chance to say, hey, we made it to our tournament, and if we win 2 games in our tournament, we now have a shot to go to the Sweet 16. So you almost have 2 64 bracket tournaments going concurrently, and as they pare down, they play 4 days each to get to the Sweet 16. You take the 16 best mid-majors against the 16 best Power 5. And you say, well, why do I want to see that? I just watched 64 Power 5 teams. They have a chance to show that they're the best of the Power 5 by playing in a 64-team field. Now let's go back to a chance for Cinderella to happen, and if Cinderella does happen, they're in the Sweet 16.
Right. The idea is you're trying to get the best 16 from each grouping, stick them all in the same.
Right, because what happens is
mega
some of these
bracket.
mid-majors are not one of the best mid-majors.
Correct.
Because they win their conference as an under 500 team. Like, you see that happen sometimes. So you're actually not getting the best of the best mid-majors.
You're just getting
so
the
let
team that
the
got
best
hot.
mid-majors, let the best 64 mid-majors battle it out to get to the 16. Find us the 16 best mid-majors and say, if you win 2 games in that mid-major tournament, you now have a shot to get to the Sweet 16.
Just use another example for those who don't know. The Big Sky Conference was won by Montana this year. They had the same overall and same conference record as Northern Colorado. I don't know. Does Northern Colorado make a run if they got a shot? Maybe. I don't know.
That's my take. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Thoughts?
I mean, it's certainly something that would be interesting, and I think if the networks actually got behind it, they could ramp this thing up and make it wildly interesting.
I think it would be so awesome. It would give us weeks of great, energetic. I mean, those conference tournaments have lost the luster. I hate to say it. You know who loves college basketball? My guy, Dr. Roy, over at the Nizam's Indian Restaurant. He is a huge basketball fan, but his restaurant is even better. The Nizam's, Route 40, Egg Harbor Township. It's the number 2 best restaurant in New Jersey by NJ.com. They've got everything that will satisfy your taste buds, and they welcome bookings for hosting events and complete food catering services. You can reserve a table, book the entire restaurant. They can host a private party or a corporate event. They're now offering 3-day lunch buffet from 11:30 to 3, Friday through Sunday with over 20 items. Open 7 days a week, 11:30 to 9:30. Check them out at the Nizams.com. More Sports Bash coming up 11 minutes from now. Football at 4. Geiff Mosher's in the house on a Monday. And there it is, our contest sounder. Phillies opening day is this week. Our Phillies opening day watch party live at Maynard's in Margate. Caller 6 and caller 7. We're adding you to the list. 609-573-3776. 609-573-3776. Caller 6 and caller 7. You have a chance to win tickets to see the Phillies home opener on Monday, March 31st, or Metallica at Lincoln Financial Field. We're going to have two grand prize winner this year, and caller 6 and caller 7 right now at 609-573-3776. You have a shot to win those tickets. You must be present to win at our Phillies opening day watch party at Maynard's in Margate, 9306 Amherst Avenue. This Thursday, the Phillies open the season against the Nats.
Hang on, coming out of the break now.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Geiff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast with Adam Kaplan is with us. Of course, Football at 4 each and every day here on the Sports Bash. Yes, football seems to be slowing down just a little bit, but we got a lot to talk about today. We were off last week, so I want to get some thoughts from Geiff Mosher from a bunch of the stuff that had happened between now and last week when the Eagles made a couple of moves, and we'll talk about that now with Geiff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast here on another edition of Football at 4 on the Sports Bash. Mosher, what's up, man? Playing hurt today, I understand.
Yeah, a little under the weather, so forgive me if you hear a little coughing and some stuffiness on the other side here.
Yeah, you sound good. All right, man. Let's get a bunch of stuff kind of happened over the last couple of days here, and we were not on the air Thursday or Friday for Football at 4, so let's get a couple takes from you. Number one, let's start with them signing Azeez Ojulari away from the Giants. You know, last week, I said there's one guy that I think that they could go after, and he was the guy. So when they signed him, I was pretty pumped. I thought this is a great fit here, but I want to get your take because I don't think you had a chance on our show to really talk about Ojulari. I was not all that excited about Josh O'Shea, but I think the two of them together actually might work a little bit, would be an interesting tandem here, and I want to see how you think Ojulari fits in with this signing.
Yeah, I like the signing. We did a podcast series, Adam and I did on Inside the Birds about 2 weeks ago, where we looked at what the Eagles' holes were going to be because we knew about the free agents who were going to lose, and then how they could fill those holes. And Ojulari was a guy that I felt exactly what happened. Sort of, you'd have to see how the market went for him because he's a very talented guy. In fact, Sam Finkel, who does analytics stuff for us, and you should really check out his work. We did a podcast on it. And then also on InsideTheBirds.com, there's data there. Ojulari averages about a half a sack per game, but he doesn't stay healthy. He's more of a designated pass rusher than a guy who's going to play 60, 70%, three-down edge like Josh Sweat was. But he has a monstrous wingspan, Mike. I mean, this is a guy who can scratch his knees without bending down very much. And that really helps him. Yeah, I mean, he's got really good bend. He's a good athlete. Comes out of Georgia, of course, and has really good traits. He just has to stay healthy, which, at times he has, at times he hasn't. I still don't think even if he stays healthy, he's a great three-down guy, but he gives you some juice in the pass rush. I mean, your main guys will be Nolan Smith. You'd like to see Jalix Hunt take a step up. And, can Josh Uche make the team? I think some people are excited about Uche. There are certainly some advanced data and metrics that Sam pointed out in the pods that are favorable, and there are some that make you think that he may not cut it. Can both of those guys make the team? Yes, we'll have to see. It sort of also depends on what the Eagles do at that position in the draft and trade market, if at all, before the start of the season. But they'll both have the opportunity, but we can't put the cart before the horse. Clearly, the contract for Ojulari suggests that he's got a better shot to make the team, and I like it in the right role.
Well, let me, for the listeners out there, they lose Josh Sweat. Is Ojulari, Josh O'Shea, or do they replace him? No. Or are they, how do you see what's left on the roster now? If they don't do anything in the draft and they don't sign anybody, what does that kind of Josh Sweat spot look like?
Well, I mean, like I said, I think Jalix Hunt is a guy that, when they drafted him in the third round out of Houston Christian, who was a converted safety from Cornell, he just tested so through the roof. It's funny because he wears 58. A lot of people say, it reminds me of Trent Cole. I love Trent Cole. Trent Cole was the king of the second effort, hustle, give you all sorts of problems, hand fight you until he got that sack. He was not the athlete that Jalix Hunt. Jalix Hunt is like a body beautiful, can jump through a gymnasium, can, run fast because he used to be a safety. And, when you have a player like that, you have to develop the actual pass rush plan. You have to develop the senses, the instincts, the understanding of the position. And the fact that they were able to do that in year one to an extent, and I actually thought, Mike, and Greg Cosell backed us up on this in the tape study, that his run defense was even pretty good. I mean, this guy looked like he could be a 3-down, for the most part, edge rusher in the NFL for a long time, as long as he continued to learn the position, get better, improve. And I would think that if he does, his trajectory takes him that way, he and Nolan Smith will see the dominant snaps at the edges. But the Eagles can't think that way, and that's why they're adding as much as they possibly can, which is the smart thing to do. But I really do think I don't think Ojulari is a replacement for Sweat, nor is Uche, because Josh Sweat was a 3-down edge rusher who was a very good run defender outside of like the collapse last year when everybody was kind of just not buying in. But clearly a really good run defender, a speed to power pass rusher, gave everybody a lot of fits for several years. That's not replaceable by a couple of 1-year, designated pass rusher types.
Well, I guess, part of the question is, are they in that mix? Let's say Ojulari is healthy and he's playing his best. I mean, would you say, then maybe he is getting enough snaps to be in that position?
Well, I mean, as Vic Fangio showed last year, at linebacker, at defensive edge, defensive end, even tackle, it's a meritocracy. He's not going to play you, ask Bryce Huff, if you're not getting the job done.
Yeah.
But if you are getting the job done, he'll play you. So if Azeez Ojulari looks like the second coming of Lawrence Taylor, then he's going to see a lot of snaps.
Well, I guess he's another guy. He's another guy in that. Is he? So would you say it's Hunt, Huff, Ojulari, Oche, and like the top two you guys are rotating, or are they not like in the same mold?
I would say there's a lot of questions left to be answered before they go into the season, but as we sit here today, as long as he comes back from the tricep tear, okay, you got Nolan Smith on one edge and Jalix Hunt on the other edge, and then the other guys that they bring in, or at least on these 1-year deals, they're trying to make the team, and if they do, then you can see some rotations, some platooning, but you want your first down and second down edges to be able to stop the run.
Yeah.
And I think Smith and Hunt right now look like your best ones.
All right, we're talking with Geiff Mosher. They signed Azeez Ojulari and Josh Oche. That was, back earlier in free agency. Ojulari was right before we left to go away. So that's what's happening on the edge there. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. I found that interesting. Then Brandon Graham officially retired. So they've now lost 2 edge rushers that they need to replace. Lane Johnson got a restructured contract. It seems like they've kicked the can down the road with him for years, but this isn't a proverbial kicking the can down the road. This is an actual guaranteed money situation. So in an offseason, Jeff, where they have been trying to save cash, they approached him with an additional $30 million. He's going to be here for 3 more seasons.
Yeah, because Lane Johnson has come out and said he can play that long, and when you play that long and you play at the high level that he's played at, you deserve, and he's arguably the best offensive tackle in the league. Then you got to guarantee his money and make him happy, or else you don't want to avoid situations like the Niners had with Trent Williams for a while. The Eagles are pretty good about that. If you are a player playing at the highest level, even more recently, right, and even at your age, Jason Kelce kept re-signing on these 1-year deals that were fairly commensurate with the top market money first center, as he should. Mm-hmm. So no reason to think that Lane Johnson can't play for another couple of years as long as he's willing to do it. He's in great shape. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that the Eagles will not look for an eventual successor in the draft. Start him off wherever you have to, or wait a year or two and then slide him in.
All right. I don't think anybody's has anything to say negatively about approaching him, giving him 3 extra years. But keep this in mind now. Fred Johnson is now gone. Mekhi Becton is now gone. If you put Steen into the right guard spot, you need a new swing guard, essentially. And now it looks like you need a new swing tackle. While the Eagles' offensive line will be pretty good starters, are we concerned about the depth?
If they had to start the season today, yes.
Correct.
But, the one thing that we're never concerned with is, are the Eagles thinking about depth on the offensive line and address.
Well, do they have guys in-house that they said, Fred Johnson we like, he's a veteran, he played, they won 5 games with him as the starter. But if he walks out the door, we have a guy that we think, because one of the themes of this offseason has been, guy walks out, we think we have a guy that can replace him. Do they have a guy here that could be a swing guard, swing tackle?
Well, they have a guy that I imagine they're going to give that opportunity to, along with anybody else they might bring in. Wouldn't shock me if they brought in a veteran swing tackle or even drafted a an offensive tackle pretty high in the draft to eventually be a successor and then start him off as a swing. But Darian Kennard is a player that, if you remember, they signed him off the Chiefs last year practice squad, and he played like 2 entire preseason games. When do you ever see a guy play entire preseason games? And he played every snap at right tackle for 2 games. And when he was with the Chiefs in his last year, he was drafted as a tackle in the 4th round. Didn't see the end of his rookie deal. They brought him back on the practice squad, practiced him at guard. And the Eagles, I was told, brought him here to kind of look at him as a right guard / right tackle. And just the way things wound up with Becton and Steen, his place wound up becoming right tackle because they didn't need any bodies at right guard at that point. So he wound up being right tackle again. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to cross train him at left tackle. I don't know that he's the athlete for that. He's probably more like the Jack Driscoll right guard, right tackle. They drafted Trevor Keegan. He's a left guard. They'll probably wind up trying to cross-train him left and right guard, like they did with Sua Opeta years ago. Mm-hmm. But again, I definitely think that they will look for a veteran swing tackle like Fred Johnson in free agency if there's one out there that they like. And it is a bargain. It's a buyer's market because there's a lot of guys with that experience. I'm not saying they're all great, but there's enough guys you can pick from that you might like. And then the draft, I'm sure, will offer them some other options.
Geiff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast is here. A lot of stuff kind of happened last week with the Eagles. So we start off with Azeez Ojulari. He signed late in the week. Lane Johnson got an extension, and then Brandon Graham retired. Then Fred Johnson left. And then Avonte Maddox over the weekend, I guess maybe it was Friday, sometime on Friday afternoon, I guess, he signs with Detroit. Not a huge loss, but now you've lost Slay and Maddox, so that's 2 parts of that secondary. Now, Maddox did not have a big role last year. He essentially got usurped by Cooper DeJean, but I guess you need some depth at that position now, depending on what they do with Cooper, I guess.
Yeah, it's our understanding they would like to leave Cooper at nickel at least for this upcoming year. But
that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he played so well there, and remember, he's a big part of their sim pressure package at times where you're blitzing him from the slot and then you're dropping a guy. But again, they don't have right now, other than Adoree Jackson, right, who is on a 1-year preview deal, a real legit definite number 1 outside corner opposite Quinyon Mitchell, or I should just say a left cornerback, not number 1, but a corner outside Quinyon Mitchell. So we have to see what they do in the rest of free agency in the draft. I feel like I sound like a broken record with that. They don't have 35 draft picks, I'm aware. But, again, it could be a corner pretty early, and it could be someone who can compete for that outside job to be able to keep DeJean in the slot. And if not, they have the optionality to be able to move Cooper outside. You can understand why they want to keep him there. He played so well, and again, there's things you can do as a nickel as far as being part of the blitz package, the sim pressure package. That's harder to do when you're an outside corner. But I always say, coaches always tell me, you're only as good as whatever options there are available.
Yeah.
So if they don't have any, of course they have Kelee Ringo. I shouldn't neglect to mention it. I said they don't have options. Obviously, right now the job it would be a competition between Ringo and Adoree Jackson. And if one of those guys really seizes the job, that enables them to keep Cooper in the nickel slot.
All right, last one for Geiff. I know you're a little under the weather today. I wrote these right now, and it could change and could be strengthened, but right now I think the biggest battles would be right guard, obviously, that edge rushing spot, and you seem to think Hunt would be in the lead there. Outside corner, safety, third defensive tackle, and if you want to throw backup quarterback into the mix. They seem to be the biggest stories as we get ready for the draft of things that they probably need to figure out, and then, of course, the next step after that. But as this roster, this depth chart stands now, right guard, edge rush, outside corner, safety, and then who's that guy who replaces Milton Williams?
Right. I thought you said, did you say backup quarterback or cornerback?
Quarter behind, I guess Tanner McKee's probably going to win that job.
That's Tanner McKee's job, right, unless he falls on his face or something like that. But that's why they made that move.
Right, exactly. So, if Dorian Thompson-Robinson comes in and starts to sling it all over. And, he can move a little bit. And then Tanner McKee looks like, whoa, he was a one-year type of wonder. And then people are going to, how people get, right?
Sure. Well, that's where I equate it to the fall in the face thing.
So
it's Tanner McKee's job to lose by far.
Okay, so I bring that up because I would imagine on draft day, and we'll start talking more about the draft as we turn the calendar to April here, but you're probably going to have to it's positions that I think you probably would say wide receiver would probably be something they look at. You're a little lacking depth at that spot. The tight end thing with Goddard, we still have to figure out. I would imagine offensive line will have a couple of spots. And then I would guess defensive tackle would be another spot you're looking at.
I think the Eagles have made the type of moves, Mike, where they kind of consistently do this, right? Where there's no position that they value that they're going to have to reach for in the draft. Like if it's a great defensive tackle, it's a great offensive tackle. Even though they don't need right now theoretically an offensive tackle, they'll plan for Lane's successor. And if they get to where they're picking or they trade up or that, whatever, and the best player on the board is an OT, they'll take an OT. If it's a corner, they'll take a corner. So they're going to be a tough team, I think, to project this year because I really do think that they can go any position in the draft and be cool with it.
Yeah, I know.
Plus, they never actually drafted their own slot anyway. So
that's true too. And they got 4 5th-round picks. Your a trade is a brewing, you would think. Don't forget, check out the Inside the Birds podcast on all podcasting platforms. Andrew DeCecco's got his mock draft up for the Eagles over at InsideTheBirds.com. And tomorrow, Adam Kaplan joins us here as we get ready for that second and third wave of free agency. The Eagles still have a couple holes. We just talked about that they need to fill, but that's a catch-up on all they did late in the week last week with Geiff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. All right, Mosher, feel better, buddy.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right, there's Geiff Mosher, of course, from the Inside the Birds podcast, and that was Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and live video streaming on the X platform and on YouTube at Mike Gill Show. For all the people, right around 4 o'clock every day, we get a huge bump in the viewership. You could see our X platform numbers just skyrocket whenever we do Football at 4. For those of you who are just checking in for Football at 4, we do it every day at 4 o'clock here on the Sports Bash, and we will continue to do it every day at 4 o'clock all the way through the summer, all the way through training camp, and all the way through. We go football every day, 4 o'clock right here on the Sports Bash. All right, coming up, we got Knicks Nuggets on the way. By the way, real quick, want to congratulate our latest qualifiers for the opening day tickets. Remember, we're giving away Phillies home opener tickets. Now, you must be present to win at Maynard's. Dave in Mays Landing, Dwayne in Dover, Delaware. We'll see you guys over there. Hopefully, we see Dave and Dwayne in at Maynard's in Margate. You must be present to win that day, because if you're not there, we can't give you the tickets. You got to be there to be the person who fills out the form to get your name pulled. And obviously, these are huge tickets. This is Phillies home opener tickets plus a parking pass and the Metallica tickets. So we have 2 grand prize winners this year. We have another chance for you to qualify coming up this hour on the Sports Bash. And tomorrow is your last chance to enter.
It's funny because I ran into one of our qualifiers this weekend, and he told me, he said, the parking pass might be more valuable than the tickets.
Really? Well, I would imagine the Phillies opening day tickets are going for a pretty penny, no?
Well, to him, he said the parking passes are so expensive nowadays. He's like,
that's true. He's
like, when you guys said parking pass, he said he's been dialing like a psycho for a week.
So yesterday, we go to the Phillies game yesterday at Baycare Park, where the Phillies play. We waited at Lenny's for breakfast for like an hour and 20 minutes before our name got called.
Wow.
We got there at 9:45. We got to Lenny's at 9:45, and we're late for the game. Think about that.
That's wild.
That's how crazy the lines are sometimes. So we end up trying to park the car. There's a sign that says valet, $25.
Okay.
And you're thinking, $25 to park these days, sounds like a bargain, especially to valet your car. Walk up and say, hey, you got any space? He goes, yeah, it's $50, and I'm only taking cash.
Well, what a scam that is.
Right? You got a sign there that says $25. We ended up giving him the 50.
Oh, come on.
we had to get in, man. Couldn't miss the game. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Listen for your chance to qualify. That sounder is going off this hour. If you want to go to the Phillies home opener next Monday, a week from today, our Phillies watch party is at Maynard's in Margate. We will be live from Maynard's. Wear your red. Cheer on the Phils for opening day. On the way, Nick's Nuggets with Nick Earnshaw. He joins me next on the Sports Bash. At 4:28 on a Monday, Sports Bash. Thanks to Mosher playing hurt today. Everybody sounds like they're a little under the weather. I'm a little stuffy myself, maybe because I'm flying, but other than that, I just got a text from my buddy. His girlfriend, her flight just got canceled. She's got to drive the rest of the way. Their flights got delayed in Tampa today, and then the connector is canceled, so she's got to drive 3.5 hours to get home. That's not fun. You know what is fun? Knicks Nuggets. Nick Earnshaw's here. Another edition of Knicks Nuggets here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. And Knicks Nuggets are always brought to you by the Hub, gear that works as hard as you do. Nick Earnshaw, welcome back. Another edition of Knicks Nuggets here on the Sports Bash. What's up, man?
What's going on, Mike? How was your vacation? You're looking a little tanner. You're feeling good. Now you're back to the crappy weather of the Northeast after enjoying some time down in Clearwater. As the Phillies, they're going to make their trek back up here as well, Mike. It seemed like you had a good time down there.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice to get down there. The weather was not great. There were some cold days down there.
Really?
I would describe it for the gentlemen out there as shorts and hoodie weather.
Hoodie and shorts.
For the women, probably long pants and hoodies.
Wow. So it was a little chilly down in Clearwater.
You ever meet a girl who doesn't say, "I'm cold"?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. I don't know that I have.
It could be like 85 degrees and you see a girl with a hoodie on. If there's just a slight breeze and they're like, "Ooh, it's cold."
Yes, it's always cold. But yeah, that's cold. But I don't mind the hoodie and shorts weather. That's like premium weather for me. I love that. Hoodie on, shorts, it's the best.
It was like the one day in Dunedin, I will say, it was like 58 degrees. When you were out of the sun, it was chilly. And, I had what I'm wearing essentially. I had a black, 3/4 zip on with shorts.
There's nothing better than a quarter zip. Nothing better. That's the way to go. And a hoodie, that's always the way to go. 60 degrees, 70 is usually my ideal. I can wear like a t-shirt, some shorts, and it's just comfortable out. But I digress. And we got to talk about the Phillies a little bit, Mike, as they wrap up spring training here. I can't wait for Thursday. Thursday is going to be fantastic. We'll have a lot of fun on Phillies opening day. They play the Nats. We'll be down in Margate. I can't wait, Mike. But we got to talk about the lineup. And Rob Thompson, it feels like he can't make up his mind here. Okay. He's going to go Turner some days against the lefties. He's going to go Schwarber against the righties. He's going to keep the top of the lineup the same. And fine. It's whatever. It's not going to make that much of a difference, I think, for the most part, if you look at it heading towards later in the season, right? Try it early on. Great. Cool with it. You want to do that in April and early and late March. That's when you want to test this thing out, especially early on in the season, get a feel for what lineup works, what's not working. Maybe you go back to Schwarber full-time, which I think they probably will do at some point in June or July. But Dombrowski had an interesting quote. I saw that, the way the lineup's set up, it's really insignificant. These guys just have to hit. I think they're good enough to have a really good regular season, have over 90 wins. I think they'll be fine, whoever's leading off. I prefer Schwarber, but that's neither here nor there. Overall, whatever that lineup is, Mike, they're getting paid to hit the baseball. A lot of money. Those first four guys are getting paid a lot of money. The Turners of the world, the Schwarbers, the Bryce Harpers, etc. Those guys are getting paid to hit the baseball. If they all go cold, we know what this team looks like. They have to produce. And you can change the lineup all of you want, but it's insignificant. I feel like at the end of the day, throughout the season, it's insignificant. This is just chatter for the start of the season to try something different because they did not make a massive move in the offseason.
Well, I have to agree with you here. And Dave Dombrowski said it. He said, quote, "You'd be surprised how insignificant it is when asked about the importance of lineup construction." That's a tweet from Matt Gelb for those of you watching on the X platform and on YouTube. Rob Thompson said it could be against a lefty, Turner leads off. Against a righty, Schwarber leads off. But the top four guys remain the same. It's going to be Turner, Harper, Bohm, and Schwarber in some capacity. Those are the four. And then Dombrowski was asked about it, and he said, "You'd be surprised at how insignificant it is." I agree. I love a debate as much as the next guy. But here's my answer to the debate this year. it doesn't matter. They're going to win. They'd win 90 games with Turner hitting leadoff, 90 games with Schwarber hitting leadoff. The question is, can they win the games that matter the most when they have to in October? This team's going to be good enough to win 90, 95 games no matter what the lineup configuration is. Now, if their offense is really struggling, and that's a reason why they're slumping at some point, then you might have to look at it. But if Turner hits leadoff, I'm fine. If Schwarber hits leadoff, I'm fine. I guess the question becomes, I had this conversation with my buddy yesterday. We were going back and forth. He said the Phillies changed their lineup too much. They don't let guys get comfortable. I said, well, their lineup last year, they used the same lineup the third most out of every team in baseball. Now, there's a lot of teams now that they platoon. The Phillies lineup last year is essentially Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Bohm. Towards the end of the year, Real Muto got hurt, but it was Castellanos. They had Castellanos in the 4-hole. They got pretty consistent late in the year, though. Now, those 6, 7, 8 spots, they changed based on lefty pitcher, righty pitcher. But I haven't seen too many times. The only one I can really think of is the Diamondbacks against you in the NLCS. They had Marte lead off against lefties. They had Corbin lead off against righties. Other than that, I've never really seen a team change the top 4 of their lineup based on who's pitching. But that essentially sounds like what's going to happen here. And you know what? At this point, I don't have a big problem with it because I don't really think it matters.
I don't either. I'm with Dombrowski on this. I would prefer, because Schwarber, you've won 90-plus games in the leadoff spot. You don't really need to change it. All right, you want to try Turner there? Fine, I guess. You're going to try and get the best of both worlds, right? The best matchup that the numbers tell you. Great. But this team should be good enough anyway. All right, whatever the lineup is, I don't care. But I think they'll be fine. They'll be good either way. Dombrowski realizes this team just has to produce, and they're going to produce throughout the season. If they, relatively, if they stay healthy, they'll be fine. But it's when the postseason comes, they just all go cold at the same time. That's been the problem every year. They're good enough, but then all of a sudden, there's problems in the postseason, and I've never seen anything like it. It's been in the World Series, it's been in the NLCS, it's been in the NLDS now. So they've gone backwards each year and gotten colder earlier and earlier. So, that's really essentially what it comes down here. I don't have a problem during the regular season trying different lineups. There's 162 games, fine. If you want to go and try and have Turner against lefties, Schwarber against righties, whatever. Try, see what happens, and it gives you a feel for maybe if you have to make an adjustment later on in those big games. All right, maybe I can go to this lineup and we'll have a better reaction against this pitcher. Whatever it may be. I'm cool with doing that early on in the season. It's going to be game 1 of 162. Who cares what the lineup is on opening day? I like Schwarber in the lineup. They've won 90-plus games with him there at the top of the spot. So I just think it's unnecessary. Whatever the lineup is.
Who's pitching for Washington?
I'll tell you right now. Let's look it up.
So you'll there's your answer to who's going to hit leadoff.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Lefty, righty, who cares?
Mackenzie Gore.
Oh, wow, they have Gore starting on the opening day. That's crazy at this point in his career. But listen, they could flip-flop the lineup all they want. They've stayed relatively consistent. They've won tons of games. It's just a matter of what they do in the postseason. Do they have the feel in the postseason to maybe make that quick transition if guys are going cold and they have to change something up? That's essentially what this is going to be for.
Yeah, so, there you go. It's basically – and look, he said that. It's not confirmed yet, but we'll see what they end up doing here, whether or not now he's a left-handed pitcher. That means I would imagine Gore is a left-handed pitcher. I would imagine Turner hits leadoff on Thursday.
Yep. So, I guess Turner will start the season at leadoff. We might be laughing about this in September when we were complaining about what the lineup is and who's leading off. Seriously.
Hey, listen, it's not a recipe for a fun baseball season where you're so apathetic. That's not good. So they need to do something to make us buy into them. And I don't know if there's something out there that they can do to get us to that next level of excitement with this team. And that's the unfortunate part about it is this team has had a lot of success, but it almost feels like they have plateaued their success. We were watching the Dodgers opening day last week, and you're thinking, how the heck are you beating this team?
Well, if you were awake. you were awake, you were watching the Dodgers. I mean, let's be real here. If you were awake at 6 o'clock in the morning, you were watching the Dodgers. If not, you might not have been watching the Dodgers because, you know how I feel. My thoughts on when they start opening day and start the season at 3 in the morning, that's another topic for another day that we have discussed before. But yeah, Mike, I'm with you. The Phillies, I mean, the juice isn't the same this year, and it's a problem. They're starting to enter Sixer territory, right? Not where the Sixers are now, but where they were over the past couple of years. Get to the playoffs, and yeah, I'll see you then. You know what I mean? Like, that's where the Phillies are starting to enter. It's like, well, you keep falling backwards every single year. Show me when you get to the postseason, and that's kind of where they're entering now because the same thing has happened over and over and over again.
I agree. Yeah. And hopefully the one thing that I think, this feels like very 2011-ish where they added the 4 pitchers. They had the 5 aces, I guess you could say, where they had Joe Blanton in there as well. When you had that team, that's where this team feels like you'll get excited about the fact that you'll have the best pitcher on the mound most days. Now, obviously, early with Taijuan Walker in that rotation to start the season now, that's going to be different.
And, it's a great transition into nugget number 2, because I want to talk about some of these pitching injuries. Ranger Suarez, going to miss probably, it seems like they're saying about 3 starts at this point. Phillies brass is saying. And Taijuan Walker is going to slide right in there. Not so great today, didn't pitch that well, and people are already freaking out. Listen, with Taijuan Walker, you just got to take it what it is. He's a 5th starter. He's an extra guy you can have there. You have 4 great pitchers in front of him. But the thing that concerns me is Ranger Suarez. You had an opportunity to trade him in the offseason. You had an opportunity. You could have made a splash in the offseason. They didn't do that. They kept him on the roster, and now he continues to get hurt. He's hurt again. I know they're downplaying it, but I'm very concerned about Ranger Suarez. They haven't even started the season. They've not even finished spring training, and he's already heading to the IL. I mean, that's a problem, especially if you want to make a run. And also, like you and I have talked about on this show multiple times, he is your trade chip at the deadline. He is the guy you can get the most value for at the trade deadline as of right now, as we sit and stand today. That's concerning. That's going to hurt his value. He's already on an expiring contract this year. He's going to be a free agent. Now you add that he's a little bit hurt. The value just continues to decrease. They should have traded him in the offseason, in my opinion. You could have got value there. You could have got a bat to put in the outfield, but you didn't do it. It's very concerning. I love Ranger. He's a really good pitcher, but the injury history is there, and now you're going to have to sit with Taijuan Walker and go through that for at least a couple of starts, and who knows? You might have to rush Painter up at some point if the injuries continue to happen.
They're not going to rush Painter up. We talked about that earlier with Bob Wankel. They're going to be very patient with him, and I agree. They're paying Taijuan Walker $18 million. They're going to try to get as many starts from him as they can when they need to. But I don't know that they could have traded Suarez. I never heard anything that they could have traded Suarez. I think other teams feel the same way. Can I count on that guy? He's a free agent. I can get him at the deadline, and maybe I'll take my chance there. But I want to see if he's healthy. And the Phillies are now in a situation where Thompson said yesterday he's going to have to start the season on the injured list. He might start later on in the month of April. We'll see. Here's the thing. Can they get to the All-Star break and hand this thing over to Painter? Because I think Suarez is the guy they'll trade at the deadline anyway, based on all of this. He's a free agent. They don't want to pay him. They don't think they can count on him. And they have Painter waiting in the wings. So to me, Suarez is their trade chip here. So they have to be careful with him because they don't want him to get hurt more by pitching him when he's not healthy.
Yeah, it's a concern. I mean, he's already hurt. They haven't even started the season yet. They have barely left Clearwater at this point. So
they might be on their way home now.
Yeah. And that's another thing I wanted to talk about is, with the Ranger stuff. Yeah, like that's a concern because he's a guy, you're in the front office, you're Dave Dombrowski. That's a guy you can move at the deadline and get value for because of how good he has been when he is healthy. He's been good. That's your selling point. And he's pitched in big games before he's pitched in the postseason. You can make one of those trades with a contender as well. So that's something to monitor. There's also another pitcher that got hurt again. So Matt Strahm, apparently he's going to be okay. Mike, this is nugget number 3 for you. And I don't know if you saw the report about Matt Strahm. So I know he's had the shoulder problem. It looks like he's going to be okay. Jason Stark put out a tweet and a full report. We have an update on Matt Strom's middle finger injury.
Yeah.
He said he was packing his daughter's toys in a box and jammed the cardboard between his nail and finger. It's his second packing injury of the spring. And then this is what, quote, Matt Strom said, I'm going to have to buy a house here so I don't have to pack, he said. Mike, don't baseball players get some of the strangest injuries of all time? And I do have a couple I wanted to read off for you today because of this Matt Strom middle finger injury as he's coming back from the shoulder issue that he did have. I went and did a little research, and this is according to Yahoo Sports. There was one earlier this spring that was interesting from Dustin May. He discussed how a piece of lettuce became stuck in his throat last year and led to surgery for a torn esophagus. That is one of the craziest ones I've ever heard before. There's been some funny injuries with pitchers. Mike, off the top of the head, can you think of any funny pitcher injuries that could go along with this Matt Strom? Because this one's
you've had plenty of guys punching walls and breaking. Didn't that happen to Mason, the guy from the A's?
Mason Miller. Yeah.
Punching stuff there. There was a couple. Didn't somebody have playing like a video game, like the joystick, like they had like some sort of like soreness in their wrist from playing too many video games? Did
that has happened before too. Yeah. So Strom, he's coming, and that's because I was confused. I was like, wait, why is he hurting it? I thought he was, making progress, coming back. It was a shoulder. Now all of a sudden it's his middle finger. Like, what could have happened? He was packing his daughter's toys in a box and it got jammed.
That does sound like it hurts.
That sounds like it really hurts, but it's a crazy injury to happen on a day you're leaving.
No doubt. I mean, to have the cardboard of the box split between your fingernail and the finger, that is a pretty devastating one. But yeah, I mean, there's been you had let's see, what's the guy, the pitcher for David Robertson, right?
Yeah,
when he was here. He strained his calf while he was jumping up and down when Harper hit the home run. Remember that?
Yeah. And then there was that same year, Lance McCullers, the team they played in the World Series on the Astros. They had to push his start back in the ALCS because he got hit in the elbow by a champagne bottle.
Oh, jeez.
So, I mean,
yeah. By the way, I was talking about a pitcher who got hurt playing video games. It was Jesus Luzardo.
Oh, was Luzardo? Get out of here.
Yeah, he got hurt. He suffered a hairline fracture in his left pinky finger playing a video game in 2021.
That's insane. That's actually insane that you could play video games and find your way to the IL. I mean, that's crazy. It doesn't seem like it's going to be too serious. He's going to be okay. But, man,
Here's
fact that he had to report this is crazy.
Here's a guy from the A's, James Caprielin, was scratched from his start when he sustained a cut when he was putting on his shirt and he extended his arm. His shirt got cut on the fence and ripped his finger open.
That's crazy. I mean, there's some good ones out there. I know Chapman, what was he? He had a tattoo and then had a leg infection. I mean, going across other sports, Plaxico Burress comes to mind when he's in the bar. I mean, remember that New York Giants? There's that one. Had the gun, shot himself in the foot. Jason Pierre-Paul with the fireworks in Tampa Bay on 4th of July. He lost a couple fingers from that, Jason Pierre-Paul did. So, funny.
Joel Zamaya, he was sidelined from a sore wrist that at the time GM Dave Dombrowski said he sustained while playing Guitar Hero.
Oh, man. If I had to go out there and tweet out what Jason Stark had to tweet out today, I don't know if I could do it. I don't know. I'd be like, I'll let someone else handle the goofy injury today. But there's Matt Strom. It seems like he's going to be ready for the season. Has nothing to do with his shoulder. He hurt his middle finger packing his daughter's toys today.
Max Scherzer, by the way, while he was already hurt, he got bit on his right throwing hand at home by one of his dogs that prolonged his stay on the injured list. So you had a dog bite. You had a Guitar Hero. Chris Sale sustained a right wrist fracture in a bicycle accident.
I remember that.
About Chapman had a tattoo infection on his leg. The guy putting his shirt on cut his finger on the fence. David Robertson jumping up and down, celebrating the home run. That kept him out of a round of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Zach Plesac from the Cleveland Guardians, had a wardrobe malfunction to blame for causing a non-displaced fracture of his right thumb. According to the manager, Terry Francona, the pitcher injured his thumb while taking off his undershirt and getting it caught on the chair at his locker.
I mean, and why does it always seem to be pitchers, too? It's always pitchers that always have these weird injuries. It's always them. It's usually not so much a fielder. It feels like it's always pitchers that always get the weird injuries.
By the way, you remember Zach Wheeler, the nail of his middle finger got caught in the zipper of his pants. You remember that?
I totally forgot about that one. Holy moly.
That was in Joe Girardi, the COVID season.
Oh, man.
He was trying to zip up his pants, and his middle finger got caught, and, he missed time with that.
Well, there you go. Matt Strom. It seems like he's not going to miss any time due to this, but this is the injury that was that he sustained today. Getting ready to come back up for the season. But before I go, I do have a fourth nugget for you before I get out of here. And this might be the last time I address it, because I'm not gonna lie, I'm tired of talking about it. I'm getting tired of talking about it because I know I'm right, and I believe it will happen at some point. Talking about number retiring. I know you talked about it early on in the show today. Nick Foles. I think Brandon Graham is going to get his number retired. Jason Kelce, Lane Johnson. 3 definite guys who have definitely earned it. I just don't understand the passion behind not wanting Nick Foles to have his number retired. I just can't grasp it. I understand when you usually retire a number, and every organization is different, like you and Josh talked about before. And it's usually for longevity reasons, and you had a long sustained career with one team. I get it. However, when you are telling the story of Nick Foles and you are telling the story of the Philadelphia Eagles, he's going to be mentioned every time because he is the first quarterback to win the Super Bowl in an Eagles uniform. Okay. Secondly, they have a statue outside of the stadium of him. I think that's even more of a reason to retire his number. You have this guy's statue out there. No one should wear that number again. If you have the statue outside the stadium, that's even more of a reason to do it. He clearly is a legend in the franchise if you already built a statue for him, okay? The number needs to be retired along with Brandon Graham, along with Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson. I rest my case. First Super Bowl MVP in the franchise's history.
Yeah,
Last time
he had a moment. His career was not worthy of no one wearing his jersey number again. They've already honored him. They put a statue outside. I don't have any problem with that. He was not a very good quarterback in any capacity, in any stop. He had a moment. You do not immortalize a moment in terms of that level. You already got your moment. You're outside the stadium. You got a nice bronze statue.
Even more. It's even more of a reason to do it.
I have no care in the world if Nick Foles gets his number retired.
I'm going to die on this hill, Mike. I will die on this hill. We talked about it with Josh last week and Billy.
You know what's funny? So I get all the text messages to the text board come to my phone. And I say, why is it that every weekend I get text messages about Nick Foles' number being retired?
Somehow it comes up.
How does it come up every single weekend? I'm looking at these text messages like, how has this conversation come up again? Like...
It somehow finds its way in, and I will be partly to blame for it because I do bring it up. I did bring it up this Saturday. I did.
I like Nick Foles has an unbelievable story. It's a great moment in the franchise's history, but when you're talking about immortalizing somebody, it's about your career, not a moment.
I think it was a little more than the moment. He's very important to the organization. I'll leave it there. An important
moment in the organization, and he has plenty of things to show for that moment. I don't need to see number 9 on the ring.
It's already been
Somebody
soft
else can wear number 9. Rodney Pete. Put it back on Rodney Pete.
Oh, stop. It's essentially been soft retired already since 2018. No one's worn it. I'm just saying. All right, Mike. 4-pack for you today on a Monday as you return from Clearwater.
All right, there you go. Knicks Nuggets today on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. And they are brought to you by The Hub, gear that works as hard as you do. Hey, it's another chance for you to qualify for Phillies opening day home opener tickets right now. 609-573-3776. 609-573-3776. Caller 6 and caller number 7. You are entered for a chance to win tickets to see the Phillies home opener on Monday, March 31st, or Metallica tickets for their show at Lincoln Financial Field this spring in Philadelphia. You must be present to win at our Phillies opening day watch party. on Thursday at Maynard's in Margate. We are going to pack Maynard's in Margate. We will have 2 grand prize winners. One will be at the Phillies home opener with a parking pass. The other one will be going to see Metallica at Lincoln Financial Field. It's all brought to you by Maynard's in Margate. Caller 6 and 7. Good luck. All right, 5 o'clock, driving you home. Sports Bash on a Monday. Mike Gill here, you out there. Final hour of the show. Final day for the Phils. Spring training, they win 8-6. Opening day, Maynards and Margate this Thursday will be live. Our latest qualifiers, it's Travis and Cape May, Ed in Little Egg Harbor. We'll see those guys at Maynards and Margate for our opening day watch party. One lucky winner will walk away with home opener tickets and a parking pass, by the way. And another winner is going to win Metallica tickets. It's 2 shows in May, the 23rd and the 25th at Lincoln Financial Field. So we'll see everybody out there. And if you do not qualify, you can still come out, watch the game, cheer on the Phils. We have a lot of fun on these live shows. The place was packed last year for the Phillies opener. A lot of people wearing the jerseys, a lot of Phils fans in attendance. And the Phils open the season this Thursday. Ryan Rothstein is back for another edition of Rye or Sigh here on the Sports Bash. Monday afternoon, crazy weekend, the NCAA tournament. The Phils are wrapping up. We got a lot happening here. What's going on, my man?
How we doing, man? How was spring training?
Spring training, very nice. Weather could have been a little bit better. I'm not going to complain about it. I still got I'm peeling all over the place.
All right.
Love Clearwater.
As long as you're peeling, that means weather was decent. You know?
Yeah, man.
Got some sun down there. Good stuff. All right, so what I want to start with, and it might take us the entire distance, we'll see, but obviously coming off of opening week, I guess you can call it, of the tourney, and today's discussions have been what's up with the tournament. And I want your thoughts on this, and I'll pose it as a question to start, and then I'll let you take the wheel. But David versus Goliath. You know, what we love about March Madness and the NCAA tournament is David often takes down to Goliath, and we don't know who's going to be David each and every year. That's what makes it, beautiful and great and awesome. No real David this year. So I'll start with this. Is David dead?
A lot of people think so, and I think there's some validity to the reasons why. The NIL has really crushed the Davids. The Goliaths are just scooping up the best players and paying them money and saying, hey, we saw you play at Iona. We'll pay you to come play at Florida. I mean, one of the best players in this tournament right now was at Iona 2 years ago. Now he's at Florida this season here. You're seeing it everywhere, where one of the reasons you saw so many Davids, Rye, was because they would have multiple 4-year players playing against a team that had a lot of freshmen. And those 4-year seniors collectively, their veteran, their leadership, their experience sometimes would knock off the 6th SEC school or the 7th Big East school, and they were able to kind of get that upset win. Well, when you take their best player every year, they're not building the continuity that they once had, and their chances of the upsets are now dissipating.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's tough, man, because, first of all, the tournament's not over yet. This is the only tournament, this is the only, quote, postseason in all of sports that we judge so heavily on the opening round.
Well, let's be fair. The tournament's not over, but generally the upsets occur on Thursday and Friday.
Yeah.
Those never occurred, so the upsets are done. In fact, of the teams left right now, of the teams that are left in the tournament, 16 teams are left. 7 are from the SEC, 4 from the Big Ten, 4 from the Big 12, and the ACC has 1. Those are it. There is not one mid-major left in the tournament.
No, it's crazy. And you look at the past 2 years, some of the best teams, most of the best teams came from the ACC, right? There's no teams from the ACC, even the Big Ten. Yeah, right. There's one. That's what I'm saying. So there's really this shift already in 1 year, and everyone's been complaining about too many teams in the SEC. Well, I tell you what, they have clearly held their own. But my point is, you're right. The dynamic this year, at least, is completely different. But maybe we're going to have an awesome tournament the rest of the way. Maybe the Sweet 16 is going to be completely bonkers and a ton of good games, close games, overtime games, right? If we have an awesome rest of the tournament, does that balance it out, I guess, is my question.
I don't think so, because, and I'll tell you why. We see the power conferences get to this point. Here's the problem, is I think one of the issues that college basketball is having is you don't know these guys. They're not relatable players. You don't know who they are. There's so many one-and-dones. If I said, okay, Cooper Flagg, who's the second best player in this tournament? Nobody really knows. There are no guys that you know. And I think what you used to kind of lag on to is, that 11 seed, that Cinderella team, they're still playing. And they kind of carried you until you got to the final end. And then the big boys pushed everybody out. And then you were really into that. Now everybody's looking at, well, why aren't the little guys still here? What happened to all them? There's no story that I can kind of. So if you're looking for a story to attach yourself to in the Sweet 16, what is it?
Yeah, it's Arkansas, but.
Yeah, but Arkansas's got John Calipari coaching the team.
I know, but it's almost not fair that, like, I feel bad for Arkansas and White. It's like, yeah, they have Calipari, but they're still a 10 seed. They still, if Calipari lost his opening game, no one would have been surprised, right? So, like, now you can't give him any credit. Like, I don't think that's fair.
Well, listen, Calipari is the coach there. He also took DJ Wagner, who was one of the top recruits in the country, with him, and Billy Richmond, who was also at Kentucky. So he took two Kentucky players who were two of the top recruits in the country. They both played at Camden, by the way, and he took them to Arkansas with them. So it wasn't like, they were crying for, you could say they underwhelmed in the regular season. And that, yes, you should give them credit. By the way, that was one of the best games in the tournament, the St. John's Arkansas game, for about 38 minutes. The last 2 minutes of the game were not great. But, yeah, look, if that's the best story out there, then that, I think, tells you everything.
Yeah, there's other stories, but you're right. I'm pretty much in agreement with you, right? And I say, all right, I'm curious to see how the rest of the tournament plays out. I'm also curious to see how the future tournaments look, right? Like, this could just quite simply be a chalk year from the opening tip. And that's okay. Like, I don't anticipate when you put 68 teams in a one and done, winner take all type of tournament, you're not going to get chalk every year, MG. Like, you're just not. It's just not it's not a realistic thing that this is now the new norm.
Here's the thing, though. The chalk element of it kind of goes out the window because, to me, you have Arkansas as an 11. They could have very easily been a 6. I mean, the difference between a 6 and 11 is one game here, one game there. Like, so the 6 and 11s are pretty much, 12s beat the 5s a lot. The difference between a 12 and a 5 is not all that much. When you're putting 14 teams in from one conference that has 16 teams in it, you took 14 from one conference that has 16 teams in it. That's where I think the problem starts to come in.
I agree. That should never happen. I don't care if they're 14 of the 25 best teams in the country. It shouldn't happen.
Right, which is why I sent you, I don't know if you looked at it, I sent you my tweet with my idea on how to make that happen and make the little guy be a part of this as well.
Yeah, there was a lot there. I didn't really even know how to I kind of let you bring that up, but you had a lot there. I didn't even really know how to respond to it. But
well, I'm going to, for the people watching on the X platform and on YouTube, okay, I will bring the tweet up on the screen, and then you can kind of ask your way through what are some of the things that I'm talking about here, and maybe that will kind of help the people figure it out. Because I did talk about this back in the 3 o'clock hour, and it is, believe me, it is a little convoluted, and I didn't do 100% research in terms of how many teams. Now, we did that live and kind of figured it all out, so we do have an idea of how if this could actually work. But, so, here's my thought, okay? Where were you kind of like, okay, are you lost a little bit?
I'm going to be as honest as possible, all of it. You have a lot here, and it's a lot of like cliff notes, and you can only put so many characters in it. So All
right. So I'll kind of go through and then get your reaction. Okay.
All right.
Get rid of the power conference tournaments. If you're going to put 14 teams in from one conference, I don't need to see your conference tournament the week before. I just watched that. Right. So what I'm proposing is get rid of that conference tournament.
Just the big ones, though.
Yeah. Pretty much all of them.
Okay.
All of them. The week of the major conference tournaments, okay, you have a 64-team field featuring the non-Power 5 conferences. So 64 teams that are not in the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, the Big East, and the whatever other one I'm forgetting.
Okay.
They're not included in this tournament.
Okay.
They play and get down to the Sweet 16, all right? So they get down to their 16. Then the Power 5, the top 64 teams from the Power 5, they have a tournament. And then they get down to the top 16 teams. Then the two 16-team tournaments that are left pair up and a 32. So you have the 16 best mid-majors against the 16 best Power Fives, and then they play. So now the small schools, they get in to a tournament, and now the best mid-majors are getting in. That's one of the problems. The best mid-majors are not getting in. You're getting, a winner from like the MEAC or something, and they just are so small. So now they get, if you win 2 games in that tournament, you get to play a big guy, and if you win that game, now you're in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's interesting. I don't love it. Here's what I like. I like the idea of getting rid of conference tournaments for the SEC. Why the bleep are we playing an SEC conference tournament if you're going to put the whole tournament in March Madness anyway? It makes 0 sense. Get rid of that. But I do like the fact that we still have the MAC conference tournament at Boardwalk Hall, right? Because now you have teams playing for a bid. I think that is awesome, and that needs to remain, and they need to figure out a way to emphasize that element of college hoops.
See, what I'm looking at is I think what stinks for the little guy is, for instance, in Atlantic City, Quinnipiac is the number 1 seed. If they lose, they have no shot of getting in the tournament. It's a one-bid league.
Yep.
Under my format, they're in the tournament. They're in this mid-major tournament now. So if they have a bad, that's out the window. The top 4 teams in league play, they get in. And therefore, you don't have to worry if you're Merrimack and you were the 2 seed and you get beat by Mount St. Mary's. You're now in this tournament. You have a shot to say, hey, I had one bad night. Now I'm in this mid-major tournament. And if I can win 2 games, I have a shot to go up against one of those big guys. And if I win that game, now I'm in the Sweet 16.
I just think it's just bad. It's more bad basketball. I thought seriously, what you're proposing is let's get more Merrimacks a chance. I think the whole element and dynamic and the beautiful part of all this has been it is one and done from those mid-majors, from those conferences, like you just said, and that does put pressure on them, and that does have a playoff element to them, and that is why they can have a St. Peter's-like run.
But it is still kind of one and done, because if they win those 2 games in the mid-major tournament, they're going up against one of the Power Fives, and essentially, if they lose that, they'll lose that game, and they're out. But if one of those teams win, now they're one of the 16 teams that are left in the entire country.
Yeah, there is some intriguing points to what you're saying. I just think, for one, it would never happen. It's a fun conversation, but I think there's just it's too much of a shift.
Well,
right?
here's the thing. Here's the thing, Rye.
Yeah.
We keep hearing about they got to expand the tournament to 96. I don't need 96 teams because all it's going to do is you're going to give me 14 SEC schools. You're going to give me 14 Big Ten schools. You're going to give me 10 of the 11 Big East schools. So you're not doing anything really different. You're just adding more teams. Under this, you're taking the 64 best Power 5 teams. And you're still giving the little guys a shot. But really, the tournament is for the 64 powers. You break it down to the Sweet 16 over there. So you're still getting the 16 best Power 5 schools. But you're giving the little guy one shot in the Sweets to get to the Sweet 16.
Yeah. For me, I look at this year and how it's already played out, and I think it is an argument enough to not expand it any further, right? Like you're just going to dilute it and you're going to water down this product that we love so much in March Madness. You just cannot continue to expand it to 94, 98, whatever. I think it's just not good for the game of basketball. It's not good for their sport and the brand of March Madness. And I'm also banking on that this is just a one-off type of a year. I do think that's the case. I think if you're a mid-major team and you're in a mid-major conference, you need to go back to the drawing board. You need to say, okay, how can we put a team together? And when I look at it, your thoughts on this, but just real quick, I'll say I look at what is the formula, and I think the formula is similar to how it's always been. You just have to figure out a way to get these players that are going to be older, and you can get a deeper bench, and you're able to get guys for 2 or 3 years. I think that formula still exists. It's just going to be different how you. The hard
part is it's easy to say that, but if that kid comes in and he has a good year, the NIL, McNeese State can't pay him what Tennessee's paying him.
100%. I just think it's all right. How can we get kids that we know aren't going to blow up and have a big year. Like, you develop kids to where they're staying there 2 or 3 years. Easier said than done, but.
Right. I mean, I can do my job and develop you, but if somebody offers you more money, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, no, nothing. You're right. You're right. It is what it is. But I still think if you're able to get a group of 10 kids, and even if 2 of them leave, right, I don't know. I can't look at this and say the NIL has already made this type of an impact already, and this is not how it's going to be every year.
All right, well, let me ask you this then. What do you think about the kids hitting the transfer portal now? Today the portal opened. There's over 500 kids in the transfer portal. The tournament's still going on. So secretly there are kids that are on teams that are still playing that have entered the portal.
Yeah, it's horrendous. It's disgusting. It's a disgrace. That's honestly what I think, and it's not hyperbole like that.
Yeah.
They can't have it that way. They cannot have it this way. They should not be able to be talking to other coaches, programs, and teams right now. No.
How could the NCAA say we're going to have it be on a Monday during the tournament that you have to declare, or is your first day? I think they have 30 days to enter the portal.
No, it's insanity. You and I talked about this a couple weeks ago about the Dan Hurley sound bites we were reacting to, how he knew 50% of his team was leaving and talking to other teams. They should not be allowed to do that in the year. When the tournament ends, that's when that window opens up.
Same thing happens for football, though. It's ruined the bowl games. As soon as the regular season ends, the portal opens, and these guys are dropping out. They're entering the portal. They don't play in the bowl game. I mean, look, not because it's West Virginia, but what happened there, that's another travesty. I mean,
and how about UNC losing right away? I loved it.
Well, forget you. I'm talking about West Virginia's coach. That whole you heard what happened there?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's disgusting as well, and that's an absolute joke.
But think about this. Yeah. So last year they hired the guy Darren DeVries from Drake. Okay.
Yeah.
His son transfers with him. His son's the best player on the team. He comes to West Virginia. Now, there's a lot of speculation, and this is wild, that the kid got hurt or that the father got approached at the Bahamas and was basically like, hey, if we have a coach open, we would like to take you and the kid. The kid got hurt in the Bahamas. Well, he never came back. He took a medical red shirt for the season, and mysteriously, voila, he entered the transfer portal as a no contact. Do not contact me. I'm going to pick my school without you. So now the father is the new coach at Indiana, and the son, who got an $800,000 NIL to play at West Virginia, is now took the $800,000, barely played, and now he's going to Indiana.
West Virginia got robbed. They got bamboozled. They got completely conned by this dude. See, like, how else can you describe it, MG?
Yeah, it's so. I mean,
even a con.
Even if you're at that level, you're getting players getting taken from you.
Yeah, well, that's such a unique circumstance because it's the coach. They're getting a 2-for deal. They want the head coach, and he also happens to have a son that can play ball.
This is the ultimate, like, I want my kid to bat third and play shortstop, and the coach said no. Well, then I'm going to start my own team. Yep. And this coach has been the coach with this kid, just taking him from team to team to team until he finally finds one that lets him do what he wants.
Yep, it's exactly what happened. It's
Now, his kid, by the way, is a very good player. He was probably the best player on WVU until he got hurt.
Yeah, okay, but still, what does that mean?
Right? I'm just saying, but this is when do you ever see the coach and the kid at this level of play are the best?
No,
there's a lot of times where the guy's the coach and his kid's on the team, but he's like the 12th man, or he's like, like this happened at West Virginia years ago where Patrick Beeline and his father was the coach and the son was one of the better players on the team. He wasn't the best player on the team. Here, this kid was the best player on the team. In fact, they got hosed in the tournament because he got hurt. With him on the team, they beat Gonzaga, they beat Kansas, they beat Arizona. Then when he got hurt, they basically became, just a mediocre team.
I remember I was at WVU when Johnny West was on the basketball team at West Virginia. Now, he didn't get a lot of playing time. He was Jerry West's nephew, I believe. Maybe it was his son. I forget.
No, I think it was his nephew.
His nephew, yeah. And I forget there's a really good shooter at Rhode Island a while back. He scored like 2,000 points. His dad was the coach.
Yeah, Bryce Drew and Homer Drew at Valpo. This was back
Okay.
when I was in college. Bryce Drew, who I think is the coach at Grand Canyon now. I could be right about that. Am I right about that? Yeah, I'm right about that. Bryce Drew played at Valparaiso. His dad, Homer Drew. So this is a mid-major school. We're talking about a Power 5 team where the coach and the kid are the best, and so it's crazy what is happening here. But I think the tournament is going to be hard because of what's happening here, where a player who is a really good player and he gets an NIL deal based on his performance in the conference tournament and his season and then in the NCAA tournament. And if that team doesn't win, but the guy scores 35 points, they're like, hey, let's go get that kid.
Yeah, it's tough. Can I pose this question too when we're trying to figure out what's wrong right now and why there's no excitement or Cinderellas? Is it possible that they got the seeding wrong? Like they just got it wrong this year with how they set the bracket up. That could be a possibility.
Well, I think a lot of people suggest they got it pretty right, that it's just basically chalked all the way through.
Yeah, but that's not how they won it. That's not even how the March Madness, that's not how the board, that's not how the committee wants it. They won upsets.
I don't know about that. There's been a lot of talk about this, that like everybody loves upsets until you have to watch the game where the upset, the ratings suggest otherwise, that the ratings say, we want to watch Kentucky versus Duke. You don't want to watch Duke versus Mount St. Mary's.
Yeah, but I'm saying you always want that one Cinderella team if you're the committee. Now, I'm not saying you make that forced or contrived, but my point is, like, it's better for the brand when you have a George Mason Final Four team. That Oakland last year, that run was really cool, right? Like those type of teams that you just don't expect to come out of nowhere, right? Like, I don't know what they can do differently, but I know you don't put 14 teams from one conference in. I know you don't put Gonzaga as, Gonzaga had to face Houston in the second round. That matchup was ridiculous. Gonzaga is a much better team than what they were seeded to have to go up against the number one Houston, right? So I thought there was things that they could have done better.
I don't know. I mean, a lot of history suggests the ratings would say that you want to see the blue bloods, you want to see the brand names that that the Cinderella stories are more for that first day, and then they want them out.
All right. So then, having said that, maybe nothing's wrong with college basketball. Maybe everything's great right now.
Yeah, well, but I think
NIL's working.
I think the one problem is the blue blood brands are not the same as they once were.
What do you mean?
Kentucky, North Carolina, they're not the Kentucky and North Carolina and UCLA that were that made them the brand names that they became. They're not the same level of program anymore.
I don't know if that's fair to say that's how it's officially, like, that's permanent, right? We're 1 or 2 years into this thing, right? You still have Duke, you still have a lot of these powerhouses that are the quote, blue bloods or big traditional schools that are elite. I think Kentucky's still going to be Kentucky at the end of the day. There's they're not going to just fall off the face of the earth.
I mean, but listen, I'm talking about, I'm a little older than you. I mean, when North Carolina was like, if they were not in the top 5, that was a huge surprise. Now they're almost irrelevant. I mean, nobody cares. The Duke North Carolina game, nobody cares about. Kentucky is not the same Kentucky, like, as it once was. Like, Kentucky was, when you said that name, you could name all 5 guys on the team. You can't tell me one guy on Kentucky now.
Well, I think UNC, they need a new coach. Like, let's not gloss over still.
But that would never happen. You would never have a situation where UNC needs a new coach because they had the same coach. But that's part of college basketball that's changing where, you had.
Yeah, but they had Roy Williams for what, 30, however long. He was there forever, right?
Well, what I'm talking about, when Dean Smith was there, that brand, he handed it off to Roy Williams and the brand continued. Now you hand it off to Hubert Davis and that brand that's not the same.
Yeah, I think that's also a whole different element and dynamic is the coaches are getting recycled just as quickly as the players are.
Yeah, well, and a lot of that is they don't want to coach with the NIL situation.
Yeah.
So, all right, good stuff. We'll continue it on the other side. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live video streaming on the X platform, YouTube, at Mike Gill Show. Is there anything wrong with the NCAA tournament? Are you guys loving the tournament? Are you all invested in the tournament? I love the tournament as much as anybody. I mean, heck, we created a vacation around just watching the tournament, and I am a little sad about what's happening with the tournament. I hope that it's better. I hope that it's just a one-year thing. We can get into that and more. And anything else that's on your mind, 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Mike, stop. UNC has spanked Duke recently until this year. I didn't say otherwise. I just said the game has lost its luster. I didn't say UNC hasn't beaten Duke, but let's be honest. Duke's not the same. Duke's not the same as it once was. The game is just not the same, and a lot of it is, look, quite frankly, Duke has Cooper Flagg this year. Other than him, does anybody know a player on Duke? UNC, yeah, they might beat Duke, but the Duke teams have not been the Duke teams that I quite frankly grew up watching, and that's just around college basketball. They don't, when I watched Duke growing up, they had seniors, they had juniors. These teams don't have that level of, and I'm talking about seniors and juniors that got drafted. Christian Laettner got drafted. He was a lottery pick. Cherokee Parks, those type of players, they're not there anymore. So that game has kind of lost some stuff. All right, more on the other side. Sports Bash coming up. Plus, one more chance for you to qualify this hour on the Sports Bash for that Phillies home opener pair of tickets.
don't seem to do great yet. My caution here is that all the other teams in their conference, the ACC, went out in the first round, and I wonder if this is the year, Pablo, that Duke assumes the Gonzaga role, that the conference does not prepare them well enough to win 5 hard games in a row, which is what you have to do if you're going to win this thing. I actually thought the best game as a whole, to me, was the UConn game, UConn against Florida. Because UConn hadn't lost an NCAA game.
5:33 Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Join us Thursday at Maynard's in Margate. We'll be there for the Phillies opening day watch party. You can check out all the Phillies action. Maynard's in Margate. We're giving away a pair of tickets to the home opener, plus a parking pass, and the Metallica show at Lincoln Financial Field. 2 shows, the 23rd and the 25th of May for the Metallica. We'll have 2 grand prize winners. One winner is going to win Phillies home opener tickets. The other winner will have Metallica tickets. So 2 grand prize winners. All right, let's go. Number 2 here on Rye or Sigh. Ryan Rothstein is back with me here as we take a look at some of the other things that are happening there. Good conversation on the tournament, which, listen, I watched a bunch of it Thursday, Friday. I was at the Phillies game Friday, so I was kind of watching from afar. Saturday, watched more than I did on Friday. And then Sunday, yesterday, I was traveling a little bit. I got home last night around 9 o'clock and watched some of the late games there. So I did watch a lot, not as much as I normally watch by this point.
Yeah, it's a good conversation we had first segment. I think it's going to be. I'm intrigued to see how it goes the rest of the way. A disappointing, different type of dynamic to start first 4 days in rounds 1 and 2 of March Madness, but I'm hopeful that we get some real good games the rest of the way. So we shall see.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, listen, I love the tournament as much as the next guy. And here's another problem with all these. I did my brackets, and I feel like there was 4 teams that were picked this year. Normally, you're looking at the brackets, and everybody's got there's all sorts of paths to victory. It was either Duke, Auburn, Florida, and I saw a couple St. John's somewhere. Yeah, Houston,
yeah, a lot of Floridas, but man, we'll see. I want to switch to some Phillies talk. I know you've been talking a ton of Philadelphia Phillies throughout the show, so just to rehash it for a few minutes here, opening day quickly approaching. How are you feeling? I just want a little update check on the Phillies. I know we have a lot of talk about the rotation, the dynamic there, talked about bullpen concerns, talked about outfield, right? Talked about first base, Alec Boehm, Trey Turner. There's a lot of storylines with this team, but now just a couple of days out from opening day, MG, what is the biggest, I guess we can go with concern. What is your biggest concern or storyline heading into opening day?
That's a good question. I guess the biggest, listen, the people talk about the lineup. They're going to win 90 games if Schwarber leads off. They'll win 90 games if Turner leads off. To me, yeah, it's your preference or whatever, but is that really making or breaking the season?
I don't think it's making or breaking the regular season, but I think it could make or break whether they're champions or not. Right, because you look at the value of Schwarber in the leadoff spot versus him not being there. I think that could be the difference between a championship or, an early exit. I do.
I don't know. Listen, I think, and it sounds like they're going to have one guy hit leadoff if a right-handed pitcher is pitching, and the other guy hit leadoff if a left-handed pitcher is pitching. So you'll see Schwarber hit against right-handers, and you'll see Turner lead off against left-handers.
Yeah, do less. I think that's idiotic. Yeah. Do you like that? There's no way you agree with that.
I don't really like it. My thought would be Arizona did it against you in 2023 in the NLCS and beat you.
They didn't beat us, though. They didn't beat the Phillies. The Phillies lost.
Still, nobody looked at them doing it and were like, what are they doing? Stupid. No, they hit Corbin Carroll, led off against righties. He's a left-handed hitter. And Kendall Marte batted lead off against lefty pitchers. He's a right-handed hitter.
Maybe it works, but to me, I think that's something a team like the Arizona Diamondbacks do. Right?
That's a good point.
You're a bad team or you're massively you're a massive underdog. You try and come up with ways that can help you, right? But when you're a team with the talent from top to bottom, like the Phillies, you don't need to overthink these things. I think it's only going to cause more issues.
That's not a bad point by you. I mean, you are playing almost like you are the underdog, or you are the team that needs to be like strategic, or you should have the better team. And why are you trying to do something like gimmicky?
It's stupid, right? Like, you have the talent, you have the guys. Just let them know what their roles are, and you live with that.
Listen, I think I do agree with like just stick with the lineup and run with it, and like they did a couple of years ago when Harper was hurt. They didn't hit Schwarber leadoff, and it wasn't working. So they said, you know what, let's move Schwarber back to the leadoff spot and see what happens. And then they just started winning again with Schwarber there. So I'm willing to say I was a proponent of saying, look, try Turner in the leadoff spot, move Schwarber to the 4 spot, and see what happens there. And let that go for like 100 games. And if you think after 100 games it's not working out, you can always go back to Schwarber 1, Turner 2, Harper 3, Bohm 4. But if you go, like you're saying, how you feeling about the Phillies? I don't want to say apathetic. It stinks. I love baseball. I want to get into the season. But it's like I've seen this team. My expectations are, I think they can make the playoffs. But do I think they're the best team? No, I watched the Dodgers play without Mookie Betts, by the way, and they look unbeatable.
So, and we can get to Mookie in a minute, but a couple of points. Do you think they'll be able to withstand 100 days in the city of Philadelphia of the leadoff question if Turner's not producing in that spot? There's no way they'll be able to withstand that storm for 3 months.
This just seems like we want to appease everybody, so we'll just do everything.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a
problem. We have people that want to see Turner hit leadoff and don't like Schwarber in the leadoff, so we'll hit him leadoff some days. And then there are people that like Schwarber in the leadoff, and we'll just hit him leadoff the other days. It's like we don't want to make a tough decision, so we'll just do both.
Yeah, so we won't make it. I agree with you there. I think it's a good point by you. I'll say this. Like, to me, it just seems like, I don't know, just my assumption here, that when you have a guy like Schwarber who's been batting leadoff for you over these past, numerous seasons, and the success that you've had with him at the leadoff spot, I just feel like when you take him out of it, it's a big elephant in the room type of situation. Like, the clubhouse knows he's your guy. The clubhouse has a vibe when Schwarber's the leadoff, and you remove that element from your team and clubhouse. It's just like, it becomes awkward.
Well, what about removing the chief vibes officer from the clubhouse?
Yeah, I think that's massively overrated, dude. The guy was.
You just said in one sentence you can't change the
player.
I get it, but you just said in one sentence that you can't take the vibes out of the room, and then the other guy.
Player with a player like Schwarber, not some backup bum who wore overalls and you thought it was funny, right? Like, come on, there's a big difference.
He gave us some great music mixes.
He did, man. He was an awesome story, but I think he was on that roster for way too long based off of drinking beers.
Do you think Rob Thompson and Dave Dombrowski were like, I'm so sick of that song, we got to get rid of him?
I think that's the reason they kept him. Dancing on my own. Like, come on, dude. What, did you really need him up for that long? I think it was time. But, I don't know, man. I think this team I'm worried about this season. I think there's a really good chance this season.
Worried in what way?
Every way. I just think there's a lot of pressure. I know there's a lot of pressure for them to deliver a championship. Okay, not a division title, not a playoff berth, not a pennant, a championship. There hasn't been a significant move made going into this offseason, which is weighing heavy on the minds of guys like Dombrowski and Middleton, the owner, right? I think there's just a lot of pressure on this team, and I think their window is behind them. Their window's closed. I do. I hope I'm wrong. I beg that I'm wrong. But that's just how I feel.
Look, your take is not outlandish. I do. You asked this a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it was a good question. Is there better, rear view or ahead? And it's hard to say ahead. The guys are getting older. It's the same team. Why? Would I think anything would be different? It's the whole thing. It's the definition of insanity. You keep doing the same thing. They didn't improve in an area where I felt they were so deficient. Okay, I got Jesus Luzardo. Do I like him better than what I had before? Sure, but I didn't think I was overly deficient in that area. So the Phillies are essentially saying, we added a better starting pitcher to our rotation. Well, how is that going to make up for the fact that you haven't been able to score?
Right, exactly. And it's like, I bring this up all the time. Wheeler's not getting any younger. Nola's not getting any younger. I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop on both those guys. Maybe it never drops, but I think it will, and it could be this year. The health issues that they had last year was essentially zero. I don't expect that to be the same this year. They lack depth in key areas. I can just see this getting ugly quick for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah, and I've been saying the same thing. When is age? That was one of my top 5 questions. When is age going to finally hit this team hard? I mean, they've had a guy here, a guy there. Romuto missed games.
Yeah.
Harper's been out a couple times, but when is it going to be where there's 2 guys in their 30s and they're, where they're missing at the same time, and you have to persevere without Schwarber and Harper, or last year Turner missed some time and they got through that problem. Bone missed some time. Yeah.
They got lucky with the Turner stuff. I mean, they just ended up plugging in the guy who ended up being the best shortstop, in the National League, not named Turner. That's crazy good fortune, right?
Well, they're lucky. Look, you're right, because they put Sosa in there, and they happen to have a guy who's a really good super utility player. He held it down and played really well in place of Turner last year. But if Turner gets hurt again, are you going to be able to plug Sosa back in and he hits 300 when Turner's out, or is he going to be what he really is? I mean, let's be honest. Edmundo Sosa is what he is. He's like a 240 hitter. I mean, and I think, look, we talk about the same thing the last 3 years. This team's 1 bat short. They're 1 bat short. They're 1 bat short. Well, guess what? They play on Thursday, and they're 1 bat short.
Yep.
And that's because, look, they spent $300 million on Turner, $300 million on Harper. They gave Castellanos a $100 million deal. They gave Schwarber, a huge deal. Those 5 guys.
That's $1 billion right there.
You have 5 guys, right? Well, they're not playing up to their expectations. Castellanos has not met the expectations, and that is killing this team. He's been an average player. You pay a guy $100 million, you can't hit 256 with 23 homers. A $100 million guy, you had to hit 270 with 35 home runs. That's the problem. He is not meeting what his salary says. The other guy, Schwarber, okay, yes, he hits a lot of home runs. He's on base. But Turner's not playing like a $300 million player.
Can I throw this out there, too, real quick? Has Harper been the best player in baseball in a Phillies uniform at any point?
Well, he did win an MVP.
Yeah, no. I'm just asking. Has he been the best player on the planet yet in Philly? We paid him to be that, and our contract is not completely ridiculous that we gave him. I think it's almost reasonable, but I think
the Harper deal, I'm saying, Turner is not a $300 million player.
No,
Harper, I think has. I think Harper. It's hard to now. Listen, in his 6 years, by the way, he's been in Philly for 6 years. He was in Washington for 7. His 6-year averages are 285, 33 home runs, 96 RBI a season. That's his averages in Philadelphia. So, yeah, I mean, has he been the best player? I don't know if he's been the best player, but I think he's been in the top 10.
Okay, yeah, fine. That's not good enough, I think, is my point. I think Harper needs to be the best player in Major League Baseball this year if the Phillies want to win a World Series.
Ironically, his best season, the year that he won the MVP, they didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah. Right. So we need that year even maybe a little bit more.
I will say he was very big in certain playoff rounds, not as big in others, but that's baseball, right? If he carries you through 2 rounds and then cools down, someone else has to help, and that's where they have really lacked. All right, there we go. That's how we have to end today. How you feeling about the Phillies with opening day on Thursday? And, of course, we'll be at Maynard's in Margate on Thursday live for the Sports Bash. All right, man, we'll see you.
Later, man.
We'll do Rye or Sigh again tomorrow here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and live video streaming on the X platform and on YouTube at Mike Gill Show. Hey, we got plenty more to go, including the Bet365 play of the day. Before we roll, let me tell you about Game Day Men's Health, Egg Harbor Township. Low testosterone levels. Guys, as you get older, it happens. Father Time always wins, but there's a way you can get it checked out. If you're chasing peak performance at an older age, Check out Game Day Men's Health. Get stronger, get healthier, get back in the game. They have an on-site lab. Get your testosterone levels checked in just 15 minutes. Game Day Men's Health, 609-365-7088. Get yourself an appointment, free consultation. Visit them on English Creek Avenue in EHT. Tell them Mike Gill from the Sports Bash sent you for a special offer. All right, time for the Bet365 play of the day. Before we get out of here, I don't remember what we did the last time. How'd we do?
Well, Mike, you went 2-0 before you went to Florida. You should have bet it. You might have had more money when you went to Florida.
2-0.
Sixers and Houston hit the over. Detroit covered the 6.5-point spread. You are now 130, 87, and 1.
130, 87, and 1. Pretty good record. I would play these bets if I were you. I can't guarantee you win every single night, but 130, 87, and 1. What I am guaranteeing is a profit. Here we go. Bucks in the under tonight against the Suns. Minus 2.5, under 223.5. Bucks and the under is my Bet365 play of the day. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Bucks under versus the Suns tonight. All right, we'll be back again tomorrow. A lot to dive into on tomorrow's show. Going to get more into some football stuff, and we will talk to you then here on the Sports Bash. But before we roll tonight, let's get caller 6 and caller 7, 609-573-3776, 609-573-3776, caller 6 and caller 7 right now. You are entered to win Phillies home opener tickets. Yes, a pair of tickets and a parking pass to the Phillies home opener on Monday. Plus, we're giving away Metallica tickets at Lincoln Financial Field. Caller 6 and caller 7 right now. 609-573-3776. Caller 6 and caller 7. You must be present to win at Maynard's in Margate on Thursday for our Phillies opening day watch party. Caller 6 and caller 7. We'll see you there. Have a great night, everybody.